Hi, welcome back guys. This is your sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the second part of What If God Fighting Naruto Got Harem. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Take this opportunity to learn to master your emotions. Worry not, I take no offense at your outburst. But others are not always so forgiving. Some take to anger, other sorrow. Bonds are fragile things, want to break under strain. And once they're broken, everything is lost, with naught to gain. Do your best to protect them, safeguard them, strengthen them. In the end, that is all anyone can do. A wise turtle, bend no knee to thee. Melina found breakfast a lively affair. Truth be told, it came as a surprise to the kindling maiden after last night's disaster, everyone's exhaustion, and subsequent retreat to the round table hold. She'd expected it to be something of a dour affair. A sullen and somber repast with little in the way of words or camaraderie. It was not. Come morning, most of their merry little band had licked their wounds, not enough to be fit for combat, not yet, but enough to move. Those that couldn't were carried to the great table by Naruto's clones whether they liked it or not. Once there all were greeted by a most startling sight. Come and get it, one of Naruto's clones banged the ladle against a cracked pot. We've got a bit of everything for you. The weapons had been plucked free from its surface and set aside, making way for a grand banquet, all while that large shard of grace hovered above. Melina couldn't help but balk at the sight. She didn't even recognize some of those dishes. Here she spied a rasher of bacon, there, bowls of porridge served with a side of eggs and some fruit besides, but that was where her admittedly limited expertise ended. There might have been a bit of mutton off to the side, and there were strange circular bits of what she assumed to be bread dripped in honey and syrup. She knew at once who was responsible for this. What she didn't know was when he did it, how could one man make such a feast in only a few hours? For all its bells and whistles, the round table hold was still a place where champions gathered. Champions had to eat, and eat they did. Once word spread, Tarnished descended upon the table en masse. Dee even deigned to join them, removing his helmet for the first time in her living memory. Quite pale he was. Handsome, too. Who would have thought? And there was Sorcerer Rogue here, lively as ever, limping only a little now that his legs had been tended to. And there was shy little Roderica, breaking away from her spirit tuning long enough to fetch a plate for Master Hugh. Thorlina went with her, simple soul that she was. Others proved more lively. Rayroll descended upon the meat dishes with gusto. Alas, that brought her into conflict with Trish the Tree Sentinel, not at all keen on sharing. Millicent alone had yet to make an appearance, but she suspected the redhead would be roused soon enough by the ruckus. Truly, her Tarnished had a frightful penchant for attracting the most unlikely allies. Everyone tucked in, grateful for their meal. Those who weren't fond of such gatherings didn't linger over long. Corin and Dialos took their portions and departed to their own corners of the hold to feast in private. Some, like the all-knowing, didn't deign to show their faces at all, and thus it fell to the averse Latenna to fetch food for him. She even glimpsed the warrior woman Neph for all of a moment. She snatched a plate and scurried away before anyone else could notice. But of Naruto himself, he was nowhere to be seen. Troubling. She could see his clones surely enough, flitting from one Tarnished to another as they served foot, but the original wasn't among them. Her eye told her that much, and so she left the feast in search of him. The round table hold wasn't overly large. She was certain it would be an easy task. Indeed, it was imperative that she have words with him. She'd seen the pain in his eyes, muted, buried, but still present nonetheless. For better or worse, his failure with Radon had marked him. What manner of mar that would be remained to be seen. She would have to watch him carefully in the following days, lest he break. And if he does once more, that little voice nagged at her as she glided through the corridors. She'd begun to fear that it, her conscience, would never let her be. What will you do then? Then she would find another. Liar. Nonsense. She cared not a jot for what happened to him. Liar, liar. No, she could not care. She could not afford to care. Liar, liar, liar. Your champion carries a great burden. I pray it does not break him. Melina scowled at the soft voice as much as the newcomer's approach. She'd been so fixated on the search that she hadn't sensed her arrival. Sure enough, when she craned her neck back, she found a familiar hooded visage gazing back at her, that fair face with green eyes downturned, wearing only a faint smile. Fia. Of course it would be Fia. She should have known that wily woman would try to get her claws into her Tarnished. What manner of poison had she poured in his ear to make him act this way? No, focus. She would not give this woman the satisfaction of seeing her stressed, no matter how tightly wounded she was at the moment. His fate is not yours to know. She scowled at the deathbed companion. Leave him be. That is his choice to make. Her retort was gentle, but she sensed the steel in her words all the same. You cannot do so for him. Millicent yelped somewhere in one of the adjacent rooms. My lord, no, I can walk. Nope, up you go. Wait, it's embarrassing. You don't need to carry me. Judging by the way her words trailed off into a squeak, the matter had been settled. Naruto was nothing if not stubborn. Still, for him to be so forward, an ugly thought dawned. What have you done to him? Fia leaned against a crumbling bookshelf, the very picture of decorum. You already know. Melina most assuredly did not. She only suspected Fia's misdeeds, and the appalling lack of certainty gnawed at her. Anger coiled in her heart, an ugly twisted root more grotesque than Godwin's ghastly form itself. She bit down on it with all her might, smothered the desire to strangle the woman before her, and comported herself once more. Only then did she dare speak. I would have it said, if you must. The damnable black-robed harlot smiled softly, a small secretive smirk of triumph that made Melina's blood blaze anew. I emboldened him. He came to me last night, at his wits' end, and I comforted him. As is my purpose, must not kill. And what manner of comfort didst thou bequeath to him? I held him when he cried. Her words rang true, making Melina recoil. Cry she didn't think he could cry. But the deathbed companion was still speaking, and with each word, so did her resolve falter. When he shouted, I listened. When he faltered, I set him upon the path once more. Those full lips pursed into a scowl. Whether you had done the same, he would not have come to me in the first place. Any fury Melina might have felt guttered out, taking the fire and her with it. Explain thyself. Are you truly so blind, dear girl? Fia stepped in, laid a hand on her shoulder. Lips like ice brushed her ear, sending a succulent shiver shooting down her spire. How naive you are, how little you have done for him. She tried to pull away, but that cold grasp, those biting words, held her fast. Art thou not his maiden, Melina? Is it not thy purpose to aid him in all things? She scowled at her. I have aided him. Have you? Now those piercing green eyes pierced her lone orb. Would not seem so. And what do you know? Melina's temper slipped its leash. Quick as a flash her hand flitted out, seizing the other woman's chin. While you hid away here, I have fought by his side in battle, and guided him on the path to being a lord. Fia didn't waver. And yet you do not know his heart as I do. The words were a blade in her herd. Her piece said. Fia released her and sashayed away. Melina watched her go, wishing nothing more than to drive a dagger through her back. Alas, the hold prevented such gratifying violence. Even if it didn't, she knew such an act would ruin everything. Damn her. Damn the deathbed companion to the darkest pit because her words rang true. He should have come to her. Why didn't he? Had she not tried to assuage his guilt after the battle with Radon? Had she not offered to turn his runes to strength time and time again, only to be rebuffed? Had she not spoken kind words to him, congratulated him on battles well fought? Had they not been honest with one another? She'd done all these things and more, and yet it was not her counsel he sought. Naruto often went his own way of his own will, and to hell with the consequences. The best she could do was aim him in a given direction. A seed of doubt planted itself in Melina's fractured heart. They had an accord, he and her, the two of them. Slowly, inexorably the seed took root. What if he cast her aside? Now it sprouted. Her vision tunneled, world darkening around the edges as her breath hitched in her throat. She caught herself on a wall to steady herself. He'd already heard Grayrol call her a kindling maiden. Did he suspect? Was that why he avoided her? He must never know her true purpose, for if he did, he would surely seek to stop her. It had to be this way. She mustn't get attached. She was meant to burn, and in doing so guide him unto destined death. If he learned what would become of her, he would usurp her purpose. The reason for her birth, her creation, the sole reason Mother had made her. To lose the teat would destroy her. Such a thought, she could not bear it, but what if it came to be? Her fingernails bit into the wall. Come. She spurred herself forward once more. After what felt like an eternity, she found Naruto in the kitchen. Pan in hand, he flipped a strange fluffy white and brown thing into the air. End over end it spun, yet he caught it with ease, hummed to himself, laid it out upon a plate. One of his many clones came quick to sweep it away to join the others, snatching up a bit of butter and pitcher of what smelled like syrup as it went. Or perhaps it was honey in her frazzled state, she couldn't be sure. What is that? Pancakes. He grinned over his shoulder at her approach, bright as the sun. Wanna try one? Melina knew not what these pancakes were, but they smelled wonderful. Still, there was her dignity to consider. I have no need of food. Her stomach growled. She flushed. Naruto grinned. Come on. Quick as a flash, he carved off a decent bit of said pancake, stuck an iron fork into it, and offered the confection up unto her. Leaning back availed her not, he all but jabbed her lips with it. Her lone eye flitted down, eyeing it with mild trepidation. Part of her wanted to deny him, but he looked so proud. Refusing now would be like kicking a puppy. Very well. She opened her mouth and let him feed her. Well, he grinned as she chewed, swallowed now. How's it taste? Delicious. Her pride would never allow her to admit such, of course. Nay, she'd call it adequate and wonderful. Curses betrayed by her treacherous tongue again. Course correct. Now I wasn't aware of your culinary skills. Great, good to know. I got a batch right. I screwed up so many times. She glimpsed it again, that sliver pain in his eyes as he spun away, but dulled, distant as he returned to his tasks. He'd done well to keep himself distracted. Perhaps that was the true reason for this fantastic feast. He was busying himself with so many projects, the better to bury it. Far be it from her to tell him otherwise. Haven't really perfected this yet. His grin was almost sheepish as he rambled on. Fitting, given some of the fare he'd made. Clones found a bunch of old cookbooks back in Caelid. Read 'em, too. When they popped, I got their memories. I see. Melina really didn't much less understand the concept of his clones, but far be it from her to ruin his good mood. And what was he doing? With neither word nor warning, he flitted sideways with vulpine grace and took her by the arm, tugging her away. A spreading flower of red bloomed across her face. Was she blushing? No, nay, never. In the end she let him lead her back to the table and guide her into a seat. He took the one beside her, grinning fit to burst. There you are. Grayrol grinned at him. Finally decided to join us, have you? Yup. He laughed as he slid into his eat. Sorry for being late. Everyone enjoying the food. A chorus of assents answered him. Millicent granted him a demure nod. Trish pumped a fist into the air. They were certainly a motley crew, all things considered. A man from another world, herself a kindling maiden, and a tree sentinel. One mustn't forget the Dragonkin woman nor their resident redhead. Toss in that fulsome fop of a finger maiden alongside timid Roderica and a few others, and they had the beginnings of a "Is this what I think it is?" Rogier laid his plate down with a rueful grin. Are we calling a war council? Greyrol bared her fangs his way. Silence, sorcerer. You're only sitting here at all because he took pity on you. Hey, Naruto raised both hands before things could escalate further. Calm down. We're all friends here. There's nothing wrong with helping someone if they're in pain. Rogier bobbed his head, setting his hat swaying. For which I'm quite grateful, friend. And here thought I'd never be able to walk again. I'm in your debt. Speaking of which, Naruto pivoted in his seat. Don't think I've forgotten about you over there, Trish. Sure enough, the tree sentinel wilted under his stoic glare. I haven't given up on giving you back your voice. I still want to know who messed you up like that. When she looked fit to protest again, he changed tack, clever boy that he was. You want me to fix up that arm of yours again while I'm at it, Millicent rubbed the stump of her arm thoughtfully, not meeting his gaze. Later, perhaps. Something wrong? Well, yes. She squirmed a little and hung her head in sullen shame. I'm considering leaving. On a journey. I've started to recall, however dimly, destiny. Roger made an intrigued noise. And what destiny is that, my fair lady? In truth, Millicent peered into her porridge. I am not sure. It feels as if something's calling me to the north. Melina's gaze snapped toward, alarm crying out in her heart. Had she begun to remember her origins that might prove problematic? How much more would Millicent yet remember in time if allowed to go her own way unsupervised? She might well become a problem in the future, say nothing of her sisters. Under no circumstances could they and Melina be allowed to meet. They would bloom and bloom and bloom again, rotting all in their path. It would be a disaster. Not alone, you're not. Naruto's response brought her no small amount of relief. We can talk about that once we've finished here. Their resident redhead perked up. My lord, he grinned. Ain't no way I'm letting you do this by yourself. Millicent's pale face flushed to the very roots of her hair. As you wish. He stood and tugged his helmet back on. My thanks for the meal, but I've no interest in a council. My path is my own. Fair enough. Naruto flicked a lazy wave his way. We'll be here if you change your mind. Good hunting. The hunter paused, then inclined his head. His gaze swiveled over then, alighting upon Trish. Melina thought she saw a spark of something there. Whatever the key, the silent sentinel granted him a grave nod of her own, and though she could not speak, some unseen message seemed to pass between the two warriors. To you as well, D said at last, and went his way. That's just the way he is. Rogier's affable laugh wiped the tension away like a warm summer's breeze. Still chuckling, he rose from the table and snatched up his cane. Once again, many thanks for the feast. He gave a polite bow as best his recovering legs would allow, then turned as though to hobble after his friend. I'll go have a word with him, please. Carry on without me in the meantime. Which reminds me, Naruto declared apropos of nothing, I want to break Hyuga out of his chains, soon. Thoughts? Millicent nodded her approval. Roderica nearly spat out her tea. Is that even possible? The poor spirit tuner sounded almost hopeful as she looked to him. He was cursed by Queen Marika herself. Melina knew he was going to try regardless. He had that look in his eye, the one that made the impossible quite possible. Sure enough, his fist thumped down on the table. Curse or not, it ain't right. I think you might be able to help. Roderica sputtered. Me, I'm just a spirit tuner, not even a very good one. Nonsense, you're great. Well, we do have 2 great runes. The Relina finally found enough courage to interject. Perhaps we could go to the capital right now and seek an audience with Queen Marika. No, Naruto all but bit off the word, plunging the room into silence. No, the Relina flinched, doe-like eyes gone wide. My lord, why ever not? Melina's spirits sank all the way down to her ankles. Whatever was he up to now? Not yet, at any rate. He wiped his mouth with a bit of silk cloth, polished off his drink, and leaned back in his chair. His posture rather reminded Melina of someone she'd seen before, and the memory pricked her most painfully indeed. I want to help people, but Khaled was an eye-opener for me. We can't go in blind like that again. His gaze swept over each of them in turn. I don't want to see any of you get hurt. Millicent perked up. Greyrol and Trish looked away. Melina felt a curious pang in her heart. She tried to ignore it. Was it truly that bad? Roderica inquired. I know the demigods are terrifying. Still, their finger maiden tried to rally. But to become Elden Lord, you must seek the Erd Tree. And I will. Naruto reassured her. When I'm good and ready. He looked away, scratching his cheek. Okay, and when will that be? Melina cursed herself even as she spoke. Gods above, was she really siding with her of all people? This is not something you can put off forever. This world is in dire need of repair. And, he enunciated slowly, making his point clear, I'm gonna do my best to fix it. You have my word. Trust me. I don't think we should rush this. Absently, he began to rub the rune ring on his finger, massaging the glowing trinket in careful strokes. I think something awful might happen if we do. We gotta be careful, you know. Melina stilled. He knew, or suspected something, at the very least. Still, his words seemed to be enough for Trish and Greyrol. Neither protested. Millicent and Roderica merely nodded. The Relina looked fit to argue, then demurred with a pained nod. As you command me, Lord. Then I suggest we return to Limgrave. Greyrol put in. I have a child there in need of discipline. Another in Liurnia of the Lakes, as well. They would make for powerful allies. Wait, I thought you said you were leaving once we dealt with Radon. She made an amused noise. I've decided to extend my stay. Naruto perked up. Sure, don't see why not. They all agreed, one by one. Not a single one of them took her side. It was too much. Melina couldn't bear the way they looked at him, even now. No, this was more than that. If he didn't go to the capital, if he did not seek the Ur tree, then things would remain as they were. If things remained as they were, she could not obtain the rolled medallion, without which she wouldn't be able to guide him to the forbidden lands. And if they did not go there, then the Ur tree would not burn. It had to burn. It must burn. Her sealed eye began to twitch anew. She settled her hand on his. May I have a word? She'd not thought to find him here. There it was, the bitter truth. Neph hated it. She'd fled from Naruto in shame, run from her weakness and the look in his eyes like a scared little girl. Father had chided her for it, even as she relayed news of Godric's death. Conduct unbefitting of the Round Table, he'd called it. He'd been right. Her will had faltered. She'd been granted a glimpse of her own death and fled from it as a craven would from the battlefield. And now she'd stumbled upon him here. He'd changed in her absence. Neph could see it in his eyes. That fire was still there, but it was tempered now. Banked by loss. It didn't take much to see why. She recognized the second great rune carved into his arm, burning like wildfire. He and his companions had faced General Radon. They had not come out unscathed either. There were new faces at the table, a woman with draconic features, a wounded redhead, and a bashful young woman clad in the robes of a finger maiden. She had no right to approach him again. Even now, hurting as he was, that was a right she must earn a pride to reclaim. She could only watch him from afar, watch as his maiden laid a hand on his, leaned in, and whispered something in his ear. She forced herself to be still, to observe now, as the pair made their excuses and departed for a smaller room. Her mind conjured forth wild images of what they might be up to, and unbidden, she found herself stepping forward. She caught herself a heartbeat later, until their paths crossed again, until she redeemed herself. Until then, Naruto knew a storm when he saw one, and the look in Melina's eyes stormy as they came. He let her drag him to an empty room, allowed her to shut the door shut behind her. She didn't bother to lock it because the moment those doors closed, she leaned against them. One hand fisted roughly against the wood, and she almost seemed to lean against it for strength. Her head kissed the worn wood with a sigh. What art thou doing, Tarnished? He didn't like her tone, liked even less that he couldn't see her face, that she wouldn't look at him. Is this about Thralina? No response, not even a twitch. Could you stop sulking? She needed a place to belong. How kind. Melina rounded on him, eerily calm as she looked up at him. And how many more misfits will you take in before this is done? Her visible eye blazed a bright, molten gold. How many do you intend to bring to the Round Table? Still her voice did not waver. Well, I would have your answer. As many as it takes to fix this world. Naruto palmed his face and exhaled in a sullen sigh when she didn't build. You're going to be difficult about this, aren't you? Difficult. He knew it was the wrong thing to say because the moment he did, the kindling maiden stomped on his foot and seethed up at him. Considering you've taken a second maiden into your service, yes, I think I'm going to be difficult about this. Why do you even care? Melina hissed out an angry breath. You dare? Damn straight I do. He bowled forward to tower over her. I respect you, and I value your input, but you've been pissy ever since Thralina joined us. What's your problem? She bridled. You took another maiden. No. He shook his head, sensing the lie. Nice try, but I'm not buying it. There's more to this than that. Is it because I won't go to the capital yet? Her emotions blazed. He couldn't make sense of them, much less discern her answer. Yes, no, maybe so. He risked a glance over her shoulder and spied Radon's specter in the shadows. The dead demigod stared back and spoke again. He still couldn't hear the words. No, no, no. He was not seeing that. Another thought struck him, then. Frantic for a distraction, he seized on it. Earlier, Greyrel called you a kindling maiden. What does that mean? Her jaw snapped shut, and with it, his anger began to boil anew. So secretive, this one. He hated secrets. Not gonna tell me, fine. I'll do this my way. He thumped a fist against his chest. I won't let anyone else die, so don't worry. Just as you didn't let Radon die. Her words tore open the wound in his heart. Naruto's gaze snapped into scarlet slits. Beneath that smoldering stare, Melina flinched. He could see that she regretted what she'd said, but it didn't change the fact that she'd said it in the first place. She wanted to hurt him for a moment, and she had. Even now she tensed, expecting an outburst. He wanted to give her one. To rant and rave and rage at her as he'd head toward Fia. No, I'm better than that. He closed his eyes, inhaled, exhaled now, breathing out his anger with it. When next they opened, those smoldering scarlet orbs were blue once more. Melina didn't budge an inch. So stubborn. Even scared out of her wits, she was just so damn determined. He didn't blame her. He was much the same. He stood his ground. So did she. Something had to give. Eventually, one of them did. Had to happen, sooner or later. Rely on me more. Melina whispered suddenly, startling him. Confide in me. Let me share your burdens. Her head snapped up. He glimpsed a flash of tears. Melina, wait a sec. She most certainly did not, she growled, shoved him against the wall and stepped in, blocking his body with hers. Scarred hands reached up, grabbed him by the face, and yanked his lips down to hers. It was not a gentle kiss by any means of measure, an act born of equal parts frustration and misery on her part. Their teeth jarred together with a harsh click and he felt something sink into his lip. Pain sparked and he grunted in surprise. MMPH. It lasted all of an instant, then the kindling maiden jerked back, face red, chest heaving, lone eye glaring great golden daggers at him. Her mouth worked wordlessly, trying and failing to form proper words. She looked horrified, as though she couldn't believe what she'd just done. That made two of them. He couldn't believe it either. Who would have thought that fiery, feisty woman was capable of such? Look what you've made me do. When she finally found her voice, it emerged as a hoarse sob. You've ruined everything. Reflexively, his hands tightened around her waist in a vain attempt to comfort her. It spooked Melina. Instead, she dissolved in his arms, vanishing into so much blue dust before he could so much as utter a word. That dust hurtled through the cracked door, leaving him with his thoughts and the shock that followed. Well, that happened. Naruto touched a finger to his mouth, winced as it came away bloody. He blinked slowly, still not quite comprehending. How could he? Kurama had gone quite silent. As such, he was left to stew in his own thoughts. They weren't unpleasant ones. Did she really think he'd been ignore her? Was that why she wanted him to rely on her more? He hadn't meant to ignore her at all. Someone eased through the door, pushing it open. Greyrol slipped in. I'm not interrupting, am I? Not anymore. No, he muttered, still dazed. You're good. She looked about. And your maiden, where is she? Probably hiding from him. She ran off already. Her smile worried him. Did she now? Boy, he scowled, trying to quell the sudden flutter in his stomach. What's that look for? Nothing. Said smile became a smug smirk. If she wishes to throw a tantrum and flee like a child, then I care not a jot. She stepped to him and idly, he noticed her tail. Unlike her wings folded neatly against her back, it almost seemed to be swaying in thinly veiled glee. Almost made him think of a dog. He didn't dare utter the words aloud. Thankfully, he didn't have to, for her words filled the silence between them. Dragons prize strength above all else. Another step now, her veil flicking out to slam the door shut behind her. Strength of character, strength of arms, strength of spirit. You've shown me all this and more. If she cannot see such, or rather, if she refused to, then 'tis her loss. Is this going somewhere? It is. Greyrol stepped into him fully, linked both arms behind his neck, and pressed her forehead to his. Mate with me. Now. Naruto's jaw clicked open with an audible pop. One word came to mind. Biwa. And Biwa, indeed. As we all know, dragons respect strength. Naruto's shown more than enough. Had to save the Limgrave bits for the next chapter. Would have felt rushed here. Late in the next chapter, though. More Nephily, too. Well, did you like this story? Yes, no, maybe. Speak out, make yourselves heard, your voice matters. Once more, we're sticking with the Embers rule for this story. If folks don't like this, it won't be continued. Meaning that if the story itself ain't popular, poof, gone. Completely. I'm working 2 jobs during the holidays, so I barely have time to write. As such, I cannot afford to write something folks don't enjoy. So by all means, speak up, your voice matters, make yourself heard. As ever, reviews are the fuel that sustain me. Without them I cannot write a single word. Simple as that. So in the immortal words of Atlas, review, wouldst thou kindly, and have some previews. Some are quite off, but still. So, did you too. SHHH. Castle Morne was a madhouse. Piles upon piles of corpses. He almost envied Arena her blindness. She'd never have to see this. But he had. The sight was seared into his soul. Right, that does it. No mercy for you bastards. 2 great runes, as I live and breathe. It would seem I've underestimated you. Bach, at your service, M. Lord. Thank you for that rescue. I'm afraid I don't have much to offer you. Millicent blinked. Once, twice, thrice. She was seeing things. Had to be, wasn't she? Does this please you, my lord? You don't understand. He's attracting the attention of the outer gods themselves. A lady of Rot has already been made aware of him. How long until the formless mother takes notice, or worse? Are you really going to take this lying down here? Let me help you up. Latenna knocked an arrow to her bow. Revenge, yes. She would start with revenge. Don't you see that Oph is gathering an army to himself? Without even trying. You ask me if I fear dragons? Nay. The answer is no. I do not fear dragons. I fear foxes. Here be dragons. This is where you began your journey. More or less. Naruto raised a hand to shade his eyes against the setting sun of Limgrave. Feels like a lifetime ago, now. Longer still, for me. Millicent hummed softly to herself, wide eyes drinking in the sprawling countryside before them. I had not thought to see such beauty again in my lifetime. Her golden eyes almost seemed to spark in the low light as she gripped the stump of her right arm, gazing out into the lake beyond. It's magnificent. He couldn't quite hide the chuckle that followed. You get used to it. I should hope not, my lord. A small, fragile smile touched her pale face as she turned to face him. The day such beauty no longer stirs me will truly be the day I die. Heat speared through Naruto's face, sharper than any slap. It wasn't so much Millicent's words as the way she looked in that moment. The light of the sinking sun caught her unbound scarlet hair and set it afire in the low light, creating a fiery red halo around her head as she smiled. She'd never been more alive. Thank you, that smile deepened, dimpling her cheeks, for showing me this place. I will remember this moment, always. And yet for all her brave words, he could still sense the tangled knot of emotions deep within her. So much stress, so much anxiety, so much fear. She longed for the return of her other arm but dreaded losing it again, wondered how much time she had left before the rot returned, before her body began to degrade once more. Would the rot take this moment from her too, as it had taken everything else? Unbidden, he found himself silently reaching for her hand. His fingers brushed hers and his sworn sword jolted in surprise credit where it was due. She recovered with admirable speed. Fingers gripping his, she raised their interlocked hands and pressed them to her forehead. The gesture seemed to strengthen her if only because he felt her emotions calm. She closed her eyes with a sigh, exhaling her fears with it. My lord. Rennala winged down behind them, and the moment died an ugly death. No sign of Agheel. She gave herself a mighty shake, wings folding against her back as her tail swayed side to side. T would see my wayward child is most adept at hiding tonight. Those lively golden eyes narrowed upon seeing their interlocked hands. A faint smile played across her pale visage. Well, thou art a bold one indeed to seek that which would be mine. Millicent tugged her hand from his, breaking the spell completely. That was a rather short flight, Lady Dragon. Perhaps. Rennala granted them a toothy grin. I would have continued yet longer, but I didn't wish to frighten the little mouse any more than I already had. I fear he's reached his limit. She lowered her arms and a tiny form scampered out of her grasp, clutching at the ground for dear life. After all he did so dearly wish to fly. Never Agheel I feel sick. Naruto's gaze was drawn to the smallest member of their merry band. You all right there, Bach looking a little pale, there. Jay just fine, lord. The demi-human stumbled out, looking positively green. I think I'll lay here for a willy. He gasped a little when Millicent knelt beside him and began to stroke his back in slow, tender circles. Many thanks, my lady, that helps. Rennala grinned. You did well to survive your first flight, little mouse. I might make a dragon of thee yet. The poor lad whimpered. No thank you, ma'am. They'd stumbled upon the friendly little seamster some hours ago, a demi-human cursed into tree, of all things. Friendly little fellow. He'd been friendlier still since they'd found and fetched his sewing kit from that wretched cave. Many a skull had been cracked there. Still he remained remarkably pure despite the hardships he'd suffered, and that was a rare quality in the lands between. Such a precious being deserved protection. Rennala had taken a liking to him. Wait, a thought occurred to him just then. Wasn't there Lena with you? Pretty sure you were carrying her, too. Rennala looked away a little too quickly. The stubborn girl wished to investigate the lake. Something about retrieving runes for you. His brow furrowed. You didn't drop her, did you? She looked the other way. Not at all. Gray, I didn't, she huffed beneath his stoic stare, a rare flicker of flame escaping her lips in thinly veiled agitation. 'Tis no fault of mine if the foolish girl wishes to prove her worth. She promised to return by sundown. Send one of your clones if you worry for her so, or would you rather I order Xix after her? No, leave him be. Xix the Purified. The young seemed to enjoy his new title, was resting back and Kaled with Jaren and the rest of the Redmane Knights as much as they might have enjoyed a leisurely ride on the worm's back. He needed his rest. Rennala could always call him if need be. Still, he clapped a hand to his forehead. I told that silly girl I didn't need the runes. Honestly, she'd been acting strange ever since he refused to go to the capital. He wasn't certain why. Was she angry with him? Did she want to prove herself while Melina hid away? It could have been any number of things, really, but he didn't think her the treacherous sort. He could sense her emotions only a league away, a dutiful presence filled with dogged determination. A frown creased his face. Melina really did want to help, but this was dangerous, certainly for one with her limited skill set. We could use those runes, he scoffed. Why, we're strong enough already, says the man who grafted 2 great runes onto his body. How many more do you plan to claim? 2, 3, 4, 5. Fair enough. Fine. If Melina she really wanted to help that badly, he wouldn't deny her. Begging your pardon, Lord Bach's voice plucked at his ear before he could dwell on it. But why are we here? When he didn't answer right away, the little demi-human cowered. I'm sorry, I know it's not my place to ask such things. He saw no reason to lie. Huntin' dragons. Don't suppose you saw any before we found you. Thee dragons, the poor seamstress squeaked. The large kind. Rennala grinned. Smaller than me, but larger than thee. Millicent shot her a scathing look. Don't be crass. Pa, you coddle the little mouse, let him be. Naruto let his thoughts turn inward as the duo squabbled. As per Rennala's request, they'd come back to Limgrave, in search of dragons. Fire dragon Agheel and glintstone dragon Smaragd, to be precise. Supposedly the former was hiding somewhere around the lakes, while the latter lurked in Latenna, the next stop on their grand journey. One that seemed more and more likely, given that Agheel hadn't shown himself all day. That said, it felt strange returning to Limgrave after all this time. As if he'd taken 3 steps forward, then a step back, that sort of thing, you know. He didn't much like it, least of all the way nearly every enemy fled before him. In their lord's absence, the soldiers of Godric were all but routed. Most fled at the sight of him. The few knights who put up a fight were summarily trounced by his companions. He suspected he had the oaf's great rune to thank for that. Even now it pulsed in his chest, a steady beat to match the heat hammering from his right arm. Radon's rune still burned there, a pleasant cherry red that kept the coming chill of the night from creeping into his bones. The last time he'd been here, he'd had an entirely different party at his back. Trish had been with him then. Now she was convalescing from the last of her wounds back in the round table. Melina meanwhile remained hidden in her astral form, refusing to show her face after their last spat and the fierce kiss she'd given him. Roderica was off learning what it meant to be a spirit tuner from Hugh. Likewise, he was loath to interrupt her lessons. Nephiluel, Sage knew where she'd run off to after they'd dealt with Godric. He had a feeling they'd meet again soon. In their place he found himself accompanied by others, by Millicent, Melina, and Rennala, the latter of whom was even now giving him a sidelong glance when she thought he wasn't looking. Oh, was she a-looking? Naruto blew out a sigh and kept his eyes firmly facing forward, refusing to give the dragoness the satisfaction she sought. If he looked at her now, she'd make it her mission to nail him to the wall again, and he just might let her in his current mood. Though he'd managed to fend her off back in the hold, she'd made it clear that she wouldn't be denied for long. Sooner or later, he would have to choose. This was new for him. Choosing and the attention. He wasn't used to folk being interested in him, not like that. Millicent had been the first to express any real interest. He wasn't right sure about Melina, and now he had a bloody dragon after him. To say nothing of any other entanglements that might arise in the future. Whatever was a shinobi to do. Answer them. Clear the air. How he flailed mentally at Kurama. I think the world of him. I don't want to hurt anyone. Really, he didn't. Millicent had struck him from the first, saved her life. She'd sworn herself to his service in return and repaid the favor thrice over since. No doubt she would keep repaying it, despite any objections he raised for her sake. Until she found her way. Until the rot was cleansed from her once and for all. By contrast, Melina was a fligate one, her motives her own. Still, she'd given him good guidance, even if he hadn't listened to half of it. He wanted to understand her, make things right with her and ferret out the secret she clung to so desperately. He knew she was hiding something from him, something terrible, but he feared prying might well break her in two. Well, she was another beast. He'd thought he understood her initially, that he had the measure of the stubborn dragoness who initially refused to so much give him the time of day. Not at all. He'd gone and impressed her, and now she seemed determined to have him one way or another. Fia, Roderica, Neph, the list went on without end. He cared about them dearly. Each had helped him on his journey in their own way. Even Rennala, new to their party though she was, had wriggled her way into his heart before he realized it. This lost little soul searching for belonging in a world gone mad. All of them, each unique in their own ways, each holding a piece of his heart. The idea of choosing a paramour from among the ladies threatened to break him in part because he knew little of love himself. You're telling me to choose one over the other. His throat clogged at the thought. I can't. Oi, I never said you had to choose one. A thunderbolt of realization struck. How would that even work? I don't know the first thing about romance, let alone I know. But you are interested. If not, you would have rebuffed Agheel much more harshly back at the hold. He was. It was flattering to actually have someone think of him like that, even if he didn't know how to properly respond yet. There was a part of him that longed to a dark instinct that Millicent had inadvertently awoken with her first kiss. It had grown louder after Fia embraced him the second time. Howled at him when a furious Melina kissed him hard enough to draw blood. Even now, it gnawed at him, one urging him to just give in and partake. He didn't know what to do with it, so he'd shoved into a box in the back of his head for now. Then learned. Kurama gave him a hard, mental jab. Unless you want to go around breaking hearts with that thick head of yours. Hey, he winced, wounded by the words. I'm not that BGMI. You really are. Try keeping an open mind going forward. You might be surprised. And so it was with cheeks aflush that he had their small band make camp for the night on a hill overlooking the lake. It wasn't that difficult. Even with one arm, Millicent was skilled, and she had both Bach and him to help her erect the tents. Agheel even deigned to both make and light fire pit, thereby saving Naruto the exasperating and somewhat humiliating task of using flint and tinder. A brace of rabbits were summarily caught and left to roast over the fire in short order with a bit of raw fruit, leaving them to warm themselves by the open flame. Are you all right, my lord? The world snapped back and Naruto forced himself to focus. Agheel was gnawing happily on a half-cooked rabbit, while Bach was busy mending his coat. But Millicent was looking right at him. He tugged at his collar, remembering the marks Agheel had left there as her eyes slid his way. More or less, just thinking. Still he felt her keen eyes on him, rather the tiny discolored bruises on his neck. Did someone attack you? No doubt it looked as though some ferocious beast had mauled his throat. Yes, you could say that. Indeed. Agheel sashayed past, eyes gleaming in the gloom. Hummed a laugh ahead of them. There was a great deal of attacking, little mouse. Quite a bit indeed, before he'd managed to pry her away. Millicent tilted her head, blinked. Comprehension dawned in her eyes and her face flamed to match her hair. Oh, anger sparked in his chest. Hey, don't call her a mouse. She ain't one. You're right. My apologies. She dipped her head, surprising him with her diffidence. A mere mouse could not hope to do battle with Radon and survive. Little bud, then. A knowing smile touched her full lips when she raised her head again. She is yet to bloom, after all. Millicent clutched the stump of her arm with a shiver. He wished she'd let him restore it. Yes, of course. She muttered softly to herself. You're much stronger than I, a far more capable ally than a mere cripple. Why would he want anything to do with one such as me? Hey, I never said. What foolishness is this? You admit defeat so easily. He half expected Agheel to laugh, revel in her victory. Her scowl caught him unawares instead, as did the words that followed. I thought you intended to make him your mate. A hand flicked down, catching her by the chin. Would you surrender him to me? Over a few words she gave her a hard shake. Where is the strength you showed against Radon? Well, if you want him, then fight for him, claim him. Millicent squeaked, eyes flicking to and fro in search of an escape. If that's not. Naruto burst to his feet, not at all liking where this was going. That's enough. Let her go. She rounded on him, still gripping Millicent's face. You would defend such weakness. I thought better of you. There's nothing weak in what she's doing. He snared her by the wrist, forcing her arm back. Now, stop, you're hurting her. Agheel complied with a scoff, face carved from stone. You understand nothing, neither of you. Call me when you've made up your minds and found your spines. Her wings lashed at the ground, buffeting them with a windstorm as she took wing, rocketing into the clouds. Millicent glared after her rapidly retreating form, massaging her aching chin. When the mother of dragons didn't return after a minute, she dared to speak at last. Whatever came over her, she wasn't trying to insult you know. Naruto plunked back down beside her, unsure of it. Her eyes sought his. Then what did she mean? Look, dragons go for strength. He raised his hands to fend off her anger, but it never came. Seems I went and proved myself to her, without realizing it. She's been after me ever since. She hates doubt and weakness as much as anything. I think his face began to burn as he looked away. She was expecting you to challenge her. When you didn't, that pissed her off. Oh, another blink. Yes, well, that makes proper sense now, doesn't it? He could just imagine her thoughts now. Her lord was strong. In her eyes there could be no one stronger. Greyrol was right to recognize such. To respect. The rattled redhead frowned. Yet clearly she cares for you. Yes, she does. He blew out a sigh. She's just got a weird way of showing it. Must be a dragon thing. Maybe she was the outlier. Her hand cupped his cheek. I care for you as well, my lord. I would not see you come to harm. She leaned into him, seeking warmth from the cold. He let her. Felt kinda nice. Was it really so wrong to enjoy it? I'm not gonna run away from this. He spoke into the silence, staring into the crackling flames. I just don't know how to deal with it. Millicent laid her head against his chest. He was sure she heard it skip a beat. You are my lord. I am your blade, you sword. Do with me what you will. His temper slipped its leash. He choked it to death. Don't talk like that. You're not a sword. But I am. Her ardent words stilled him as much as the devotion behind them. You misunderstand. I knew nothing before you came into my life. She dared to reach up and grip his shoulder with her good hand. All of my memories were gone, eaten away by the rot. Now they have begun to return, and whenever I close my eyes I find you there. At the center. You are always in my thoughts. His heart kicked against his chest. Golden eyes flicked up to meet his, half-witted with desire. Allow me to express that once more, and please forgive my presumptuousness again. Millicent leaned up from where she laid against him, pivoted, and delivered a chaste kiss to his lips. It was a brief, fleeting thing. Even then it nearly burned his world white. She pulled away, eyes holding a frail, tentative warmth. When he didn't immediately respond, she touched his face and kissed him yet again, stronger this time, lips lingering over his own, bringing with it the faint scent of her. She smelled of wildflowers and cherries, and there beneath it all, a faint, sickly sweet smell. It was too much. Naruto's control slipped and his arms committed bloody mutiny. He found himself looping an arm around her waist to draw her into a crushing kiss. She noticed at once, made a pleased noise, and pressed herself against him, all but sitting in his lap. By the sage, she was soft. Warm, too. He wanted to hold her forever. He held her for what felt like an eternity, until finally, he had to break for air. Mercifully, Millicent didn't test his limits a fourth time. Earlier, you said you would aid me. She shifted against him, head to chest, facing the fire. Would you hold to your words? Even now I must. Go north, she said after a long moment. I feel as though something is calling me there. Someone perhaps, or wait. She looked past the flames, frowned. What's that? I see a light. Naruto turned to follow her gaze, frowned. There was a burning beacon out on the lake. It hadn't been lit before. Someone was running away from it, waving their arms frantically, shouting. He recognized the pale robes at a glance. Melina, gone, she cried out, tripped, and clambered upright, running for her life. She's shouting something. He sat up, not quite comprehending why she was running. Much. What in the world? Dragon. Realization dawned. Bugger. As though summoned by those very words, Greyrol came crashing back down. She struck the earth a yard away with neither word nor warning, bloodied from head to toe and gasping for air. One of her wings had been torn clean off, but it was growing back even as he looked on. Much to his chagrin, she tilted her head towards the night sky, slitted eyes sliding shut. He heard her inhale deeply, and then she screamed, a low, ululating sound that rang through the night. Something screamed back. A distant dark shape came crashing through the clouds and arrowed toward the beacon the Melina fled from. The poor souls worshipping it never stood a chance. One moment were still gazing toward the sky, arms raised in supplication, utterly unaware of the doom hurtling their way. They continued to pray until their very last moment. In the next they were so much red mist. This new dragon was a fair sight larger than young X. Healthier, too, with none of the wicked rot that had plagued his lesser kin. Not as large as Greyrol's natural state or Kurama, but in a different league all the same. Dark russet scales glimmered in the dying light of the beacon as he craned back his neck and stood on his hind legs. He looked to and fro, searching for his prey. A deep voice boomed with fiery thunder. Show yourself. Each word was an explosion, leaving their ears ringing. Who dares challenge Agheel? I dare. His head snapped toward them. Naruto swore softly. You have forgotten yourself. Greyrol started down the rise, eyes blazing. How far you have fallen, that you would strike your own mother. I have done no such thing. The fire dragon snorted and moved to meet her, expelling a thin plume of steam with every step. My mother rots in the Kaled wilds. Greyrol absolutely hissed. You ungrateful little, if I could transform, you would see the error of your ways. Naruto edged forward, grabbed her by the shoulder, and hauled her back. Let me try. A giant pupil fixated upon him. Brave little mouse. But bravery means naught to me. I will bend no knee to thee. Not asking you to. His mouth curled in a small smile. This only ends one way. The beast scoffed. With your charred corpse in my jaws. Nope. He inhaled deeply, pulling natural energy from the air, letting his eyes blaze gold. With you on my side. So why don't we skip the brawl and just talk this out like? A wing slammed forward at his head. He caught it and slapped it back, sending the fireworm reeling. Agheel jolted back, snorting harshly. What manner of sorcery is this? No sorcery here. Tell you what. He crossed both arms across his armored chest. I won't even use Kurama for this. Just my hands and... His gaze swept over his companions and settled on the Melina, who'd circled around to join them at last. She wanted a chance to prove herself all right. Her spells, credit where it was due, the maiden reacted quickly and scrambled to his side. One hand touched his back, fingers splayed with the other raised, she whispered a rapid incantation. A golden sigil bloomed over their heads as she took one hand away and thrust it into the air. The moment she did, he felt the ache leave his bones, his mental exhaustion siphoned away and replaced with raw vigor. She didn't stop there. Another spell went up, bringing with it a startling surge of strength. No, not a spell, he realized. Something was flowing into him from her palm, kissing his back to lance through his body. A gentle sort of warmth enfolded him and he felt his eyes widen. Godric and Radon's runes burned ever brighter on his body, baffling him yet further. Agheel snorted, but made no move to intervene, proud dragon that he was. The Melina took the opportunity to lean closer, all but pressing herself against his back. Does this please you, my lord? What the hell are you doing? She smiled tentatively. Merely turning your runes to strength. It was then that Naruto finally understood. He'd collected thousands of runes during his journey, thus not knowing how to use them. Not caring to. The Melina wasn't able to reach them all, fledgling maiden that she was, but she found enough in those that she touched ignited, burning in his blood. It felt wonderful. Strength surged through him, adding to his already expansive prowess. Could Melina do this? Why hadn't she? He felt like he could leap into the clouds, vault mountains, tear down the moon itself. Agheel scoffed, wholly unaware of what had just transpired. A little mouse in his maiden. Hardly a worthy meal of one such as I. Well, I am fighting a mighty dragon after all, Naruto grinned, appealing to the worm's pride. I need all the help I can get. Bach blinked. But lord, can't you just? Guerrero clamped a hand over the demi-human's mouth and hid a laugh behind her palm with the other. Millicent looked on with a rare smile. Sure enough, the sarcasm went right over Agheel's horned head. Very well, then to battle. Naruto planted his feet and beckoned. You first. The dragon lunged. This was madness. Melina nearly burst from cover when Agheel lunged, nearly leaped forward and shoved Naruto aside from those gaping jaws. Fear and self-loathing that held her back kept her hidden in astral form for a second too long, a moment too late, a sliver of eternity that seemed to stretch on, dragging on to eternity. She saw that mighty maw open wide, ready to bite. Bad enough that fledgling maiden turned some of his runes to strength her task, and no others, thus leaving her feeling even more inadequate than before, but now this. Dodge, she hissed at him, willing him to move, to do something, anything at all. Move aside. Naruto did no such thing. Instead he turned, looking at her. Right at her. He just smiled. Then that fanged maw closed around her Tarnished and he vanished from view as those great gaping jaws caught him. Agheel's body plowed forward to kick up a mighty cloud of dust, a mighty impact that threw the Melina to safety even as her Tarnished was swallowed whole. Melina's heart leaped into her throat and she choked off a sob. That was it. He was dead, then. All her work and sorrow for nothing. Why wasn't there any blood? All at once the smoke cleared, defying her expectation. Naruto stood fast within, holding the dragon's jaws apart with his bare hands. He looked up, strengthened his stance, and took a step forward. My turn. With a roar he reared up, gripping the dragon by its head, lifted him clear off the ground with naught but his bare hands and brought him crashing down. Agheel howled his rage and bathed him in napalm in recompense for his temerity. Too little, too late. The blonde took it head on, still shimmering in the odd aura the Melina had given him. His mouth twisted in a wide, toothy grin. Is that all? Agheel's tail whipped out over his head, seeking to smash his prey down while he stood still. Rather than retreat, the whiskered warrior released the beast's jaws and opened his arms wide. The towering tail that was once meant to smite him found itself caught instead, held tight against his chest. Agheel had all of a mere moment to realize his folly, then he found himself yanked backward and spun about. Once, twice, thrice, now. On the third revolution Naruto finally let go and flung him away into the air. Guerrero's kin howled in surprise as he righted himself in the air. Flame flickered behind his jaws. You dare. He was still howling when Naruto appeared on his back. Alighting between the worm's shoulders, he raised an arm high. A keening azure sphere hissed in his open palm. With each passing moment it grew larger, casting the dragon in its shadow. Agheel saw it and bellowed his rage, trying to roll, to no avail. The blonde held tight, feeding more and more power to the snarling, spiraling with each moment. Dishonorable human, you said you wouldn't use any spells. Wrong, came the answering cry. I said I'd only use my hands. With a laugh, Naruto brought it crashing down and so too did the dragon crumple to the ground. Agheel did not have a good time after that, Melina found. He had a very bad time indeed. And here be dragons indeed. Unfortunately for them, here be Naruto. We'll reach Liurnia next chapter. Let the good times rule. Well, did you like this story? Yes, no, maybe. Speak out, make yourselves heard, your voice matters. Once more, we're sticking with the Embers rule for this story. If folks don't like this, it won't be continued. Meaning that if the story itself ain't popular, poof, gone. Completely. I'm working 2 jobs during the holidays, so I barely have time to write as such. I cannot afford to write something folks don't enjoy. So by all means, speak up, your voice matters, make yourself heard as ever. Reviews are the fuel that sustain me. Without them I cannot write a single word. Simple as that. Next chapter title, Long Live the Queen. Whistles innocently, gee, I wonder who that is. So in the immortal words of Atlas, review, wouldst thou kindly, and have some previews. Some are quite off, but still. Rennala raised her head. Those were her son's swords on the golden warrior's back. A lone tear rolled from her left eye, touched her cheek, ran down her chin. Radon, her baby boy. The crucible knight crashed down to a knee. Trish care to translate. Of course I'm gonna help him. He began to count off on his fingers. Hugh, Blade, Alexander, Rogier, and the ever-surly D. Well, they were his friends. Each had their own goals, their own quests. He wanted to help them out, you know. You have sisters. Millicent blinked. I do. A knife slammed into his gut. Naruto looked down. Up at them. Down again. I'm sorry, was that supposed to do something? Clenched knuckles roared up. His attacker rocketed into the air. You're a jerk backward, eyes bulging beneath his iron hat. What the devil are you? Easy, no. I'm a friend. Let's just talk. No need for swords to come out. You're no bloody finger, that's for certain. The voices were calling to her again. North you must go, north awaits thee. Millicent shook her head. Not yet. A faint shimmer of light in the night heralded her presence. Naruto didn't look up from the campfire. Finally done hiding, are you? Ain't nothing like a family, you know. Family, how are we a family? Because we're still alive. Long live the queen. See, I told you we'd be friends. Please, forgive my rudeness. Nothing to forgive. Naruto couldn't help but preen a little when he said that. Why wouldn't he? Victory was his. A thoroughly beaten and bruised Agheel limped after their party, head bowed in defeat. He knew he'd been beat. All well and good in his book, he wasn't willing to take another life if he could avoid it, and the surly had put up quite the fight near the end. Would have been a shame to put him down after all that, you know, would have broke Greyrol's heart, too. Also something to be avoided. Now if she would just stop smirking like the cat that caught the canary. Have you learned your lesson now, my son? Sure enough, Grey couldn't resist ribbing her progeny. If you wish to go another round with my mate, I would not protest. Bach tilted his head. Mate, Millicent and Erlina bridled in unison. Naruto rolled his eyes. Here we go again. Him mate, Agheel all but thundered. With a human. Why ever not? Although he couldn't see her from this angle, Naruto just knew her smile was nothing short of sly. Mine current form is human where it counts. Don't read into it. Rather than rise to the bait, he clasped both hands behind his head and kept walking. She hasn't sealed the deal yet, no matter what she might say. Greyrol huffed. So cold. Still, that's what I like about thee. He rolled his eyes anew and kept walking. You all right there? Kurama sensed his mood at once. That's a bit cold, even for you. No, he wasn't all right. Not at all. He could feel someone watching them, stalking them, an unseen presence just out of sight, but not out of mind. It wasn't Melina. She must have sensed it as well in her astral form, because he could feel her floating close to his shoulder, closer than she had been when Agheel attacked. He couldn't even determine its intent. It didn't feel hostile or malevolent quite yet, just curious. But curiosity wasn't always a good thing now, was it? The rune on his finger hummed. Be wary, don't gotta tell me twice. In the end their voyeur didn't show, and thankfully, it didn't take much to convince Agheel to follow them deeper into the lands between. His kind respected strength after all, and he'd shown his own in spades. He wasn't quite sure what he intended to do with all these dragons he seemed to be collecting, but surely something would come to him, sooner or later. He'd figure something out after they rounded up Smaragd and sacked the academy. At least Liurnia of the Lakes lived up to its name. Once a lovely valley, it had long since flooded during the shattering. Its prosperous gate town was now little more than a sunken ruin haunted by monsters and shades, and it was into this hell that their ragtag little band descended. Hard to believe this place had once been a splendid place of commerce, a place where people came from far and wide to learn the secrets of magic. It is our history, my lord. Millicent really knew her stuff, it seemed. When asked as much, she'd flushed only a little under his gaze. We must endeavor to remember it. If not us, then who? Under his bemused stare, her pale face had turned a pretty shade of pink. Forgive me. I wanted to be of use to you. I've also done a fair bit of reading in the Round Table Hold on the subject. And didn't he just hate that place? He disliked the idea of leaving a recovering Trish anywhere near. Gideon guy gave him bad vibes, but that pesky pact on the Hold prevented him from inflicting any sort of harm upon the so-called all-knowing. He'd have to trust in his friends and Rogier to see her safe until he returned. And he would be, just as soon as they concluded their business here. And there was still much work to do, both within their group and without. That's putting it mildly. You've attracted quite the eclectic band of rogues, haven't you? He cast a quick glance back at the others. Greyrol had chosen to ride atop Agheel's head when he wasn't looking. Now the former conversed with Millicent and a fretful Bach. The latter was trying to look anywhere but at the great beast, a fact that both dragons seemed to find infinitely amusing. But where was? It's a lovely day, isn't it, my lord? The ghost of a smile touched his face. Guess it is. He knew the remark hadn't come from his seamster, but Erlina. She was practically beaming beside him, the silly girl, all but gleaming with glee. Well, I suppose she's got a right to be happy. If she hadn't had won before, the fledgling maiden had undoubtedly cemented her place in their group. She'd done her part against Agheel, and while he still would have won the battle even without her aid, the boost she'd given him was not insubstantial. Even now he could feel himself brimming with power strength left unspent during his fight. If this was the power of runes, why hadn't Melina unlocked his before the Latenna hadn't even reached all of them? Yet he felt like he could wrestle a mountain and win. My lord, she was still staring at him now, as if he were her whole world. It may be presumptuous to ask, but he knew what she craved and turned a smile on her. You did good back there. Real good. Her eyes lit up. I did, without a doubt. He nudged her shoulder as they weaved their way around a fallen tree. Couldn't have done that without you. Truly, not a lie, really. He wouldn't be this strong without her. Had he broken his limits? Was it possible to go even further? The possibilities seemed endless. No, he chastised himself. Don't get too excited. It would all too easy to get drunk on a power like this. Best tread carefully. Unfortunately, the Latenna mistook his silence for anger and squirmed under his gaze. I'll get better, I promise. So, a blink. Naruto didn't like the sudden pang of negativity he felt from her just then. So please, those bright eyes met his. Don't throw me away. Throw away his. Emotions slipped their leash. You need to stop that. He pivoted, grasping her by both shoulders so hard that she yelped. No more sulking, no more disparaging yourself. I'm not gonna get rid of you. Not ever. Do you understand? I like helping people. You're not the first. And you won't be the last. I'm gonna do my damnedest and help everyone I come across. He began to count off on his fingers before he, further hammering his point home. Hugh, Blade, Alexander, Rogier, and the ever-surly Dwell, they were his friends, just like her. They might have their own goals, their own quests, but I still want to help them out. You know that includes you get me. The Latenna sniffled. Oh gods, he'd upset Parental. She turned a shining smile on him and he realized he hadn't. Not at all. Her hands flitted out to hold his. I understand. Yes, I understand perfectly. The two fingers truly did guide me to you, my lord. No, my master, for you to quell the doubts in my heart with only a few words. Master. Great, you've flipped her switch. Millicent made a displeased noise behind them. Are the two of you quite done? Look, Lord Bach's voice mercifully cut her off before the two could squabble. There's a cave ahead. Oh, thank the log for distractions. Naruto paused, frowned, squinted now. Sure enough, there was an opening carved into a nearby rock face. Shallow perhaps, but just wide enough for a reasonable-sized person to fit through. He couldn't see what lay within, how deep it was, or anyone that might be taking shelter inside. Wait. He told a lie. There was something there. No, not something. Someone. An odd itch gnawed at the back of his brain, and unbidden, he felt himself taking a step forward. Two now. He would have taken a third still if the Latenna hadn't tugged him back. Parental balked. Must we go in there? Feels like we should. You might be a bit too big to fit in there, though. Parental made angry Parental noises. Naruto quirked a brow at her. It's just a cave. Nothing worry about. Was worried. She tore her gaze aside, tail twitching behind her. Not I. A faint smile touched his lips. It was almost too good to be true. Don't tell me you're scared. Nonsense. The dragoness reared back, puffed out her chest. I am a dragon, not some hapless fool who fears the arg. A wolf's howl echoed within, rendering her haughty response a string of gibberish as she sought shelter behind him. Well, she tried. One couldn't exactly hide when she was that damn tall. Naruto felt a grin tear across his face. He'd seen Parental grapple with gods, survive grievous wounds, and take the piss out of anyone who dared to cross her. In truth, he'd begun to think she feared nothing. How lovely it was, very lovely indeed, to be proven wrong. You're afraid of the dark, ain't ya? He grinned up at her. That's kind cute. Her eyes widened. Cute, I know not the meaning of this word. Do you mock me? Naruto told her in no uncertain terms. Gray blinked. She blinked hard, reared back as if he'd struck her, eyes narrowed to vicious vermilion slits now as her pale face turned a startling shade of scarlet. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again as she tried to find some semblance of speech, only to fail miserably. Did I say something wrong? Bah, she jerked back and spread her wings, nearly buffeting him in the process. Have your cave, then I hope a rock falls on your skull. I shall scout ahead. An arm looped around the Latenna, reeling the smaller girl in before she could get away. Come, little maiden. I would have words with thee. The Latenna balked, realizing her peril. Now wait just a moment. Parental took wing and her words peaked into a shriek as they roared up into the clouds. Agheel rumbled softly, a deep throaty sound that might have been a laugh. I shall keep an eye on her. Sure, I mean, please do. Naruto watched him wing after her with a quizzical frown. Wonder what that was about. Millicent stepped to him. Will she be all right? Probably. Gray's tough. She hid a smile behind her hand. I was asking about the Latenna. Oh, he frowned. Well, I'm sure they won't kill each other at the very least. Bach, silent until this very moment, coughed into a fist. Begging your pardon, lord, but I'm not one for caves either. I don't suppose we could let it be. A blonde brow rose. Wanna wait out here? The little demi-human squeaked in quiet fear. Alone I'll be eaten alive. Well, he didn't have to be. Nothing a clone couldn't solve, but then again, he didn't want them wandering off again. Here. He dug a hand into his pouch and came up with the bell Ranni had given him so long ago. Use this to call a pack of wolves. They'll keep us safe. His seamster considered the trinket for a moment, looked like he wanted to protest, then firmed himself up. Right, then, lord. He gave him a curt nod, trying to be braver than he was. I'll wait for you here. Please hurry back. Don't worry, I will. On a whim, he bent to pat the little creature's head. Just holler if you need help, and I'll come running right back, okay? Millicent touched a hand to his arm. Worry not, I will accompany you. Appreciate it. She leaned against him and he luxuriated in her warmth, taking strength from her presence, before he turned to the last member of his party. Idly, he wondered if Melina would manifest herself. It was not to be. Although he could sense her presence nearby, she remained silent as ever. Her emotions muffled, thoughts hidden, she was in very way a silent specter, refusing to speak unless she wished. Another mountain to climb. Later, then. For now, they had a cave to explore. All right, then. Let's see what's in there. Latenna could feel herself slipping away. As if she were clinging to a slippery slope with both hands, so too could she feel herself falling, sliding into the black. How long had she lay here? How long had she suffered poison in her veins, stemming from the foul arrow piercing her thigh? The toxins within were eating at her. She was not long for this world. Truly, it was a miracle she'd managed to make it through the cave at all, but here at last dear Lobo had collapsed, spilling her onto the cold, uncaring grass. Even now his great form shuddered with weaker and weaker breaths. If she was on death's doorstep, her dear wolf was crossing the threshold. She would die here, and her dear partner with her. It wasn't fair. She mustn't perish. No, nay, not yet. There was still so much to do. She needed to go back, return to the village, avenge the others. Wait, that noise. She heard footsteps. Fear kicked against her chest. Another one of them, most likely, another brute in service to the all-knowing. See, she heard the voices soon thereafter. Told you there was an exit, Thurio. Millicent, watch the exit, I'll be right back. Latenna saw boots enter her field of vision and feared a kick. It never came. They just stood there. She scowled where she lay, still scarcely able to move. Who goes there? Have you come to kill me? Her wolf growled. Even on death's door, Lobo shifted his great bulk to defend her. And yet her tormentor did not speak. Fell Tarnished. The very words boiled in her blood, much like the toxin slowly killing her. What do you want? I told the all-hearing brute that I do not possess the medallion he seeks. It still lay with old Albus, a secret she would take to her grave. My answers to his questions remain the same. I will divulge nothing more. What questions? Her lips thinned in a taut, angry line. Would that her legs weren't so weak, would that she could stand and fight, would that she could flee. Alas, she lacked the strength to do anything more than scowl. Have you come to take more from me? Tarnished more than the all-hearing brute already took a faint shudder passed through Lobo's body behind her and she fought down a sob. Was my other half not enough? Leave me be. The voice didn't waver. I'm not going to hurt you. A hand reached for her. In a fit of pique, Latenna slapped it away. Not going to hurt her, lies lurid and false, just like the rest. They'd welcomed Gideon's men in good faith, fallen for his silver tongue, even held a feast to honor the protection that all-hearing brute had promised them. And then that man-monster had brought the slayers, the Omen killers, the butchers. Her family had been slaughtered. He mother her brothers, and her sisters, even the little ones. Hazy, there. The newcomer dropped down to his haunches and knelt before her. You've lost an awful lot of blood, you know. Rage gave her the strength to raise her head. I said leave me. Words caught in her throat, strangling a curse. His hair shone like the sun and his body more so, all burning, glowing gold, etched with black marks. Stranger still, his eyes were of pure amber, slitted like those of a cat with another line running lengthwise through them. They were, perhaps, the most unnatural eyes she'd ever lay eye, pardon the pun. What was he, man, monster, something between? I'm sorry I couldn't come sooner, he said. Relax, I'm here. It's going to be all right now. For all his fearsome appearance, he smiled at her, reached past now, laid hands not on Latenna herself, but upon her wolf. Light suffused his palms, a gentle guiding glow. Lobo shook beneath it, less a gasp and more of a tremor. Wounds mended at his touch. A missing leg regrew. His once labored breaths began to even out. She heard his heartbeat grow stronger with each passing moment, until... Good boy. The light faded as the stranger leaned back. See, friendly blood, she yelped as Lobo sprang to his feet. Watch the tongue, not the face, down. Latenna balked. Her other half hadn't been long for this world. Yet here he was, spry as a pup, and twice as enthusiastic. The golden man, she couldn't think of anything else to call him, fended off his enthusiasm with one hand, bracing himself on the ground with another as he laughed. What are you? Whiskered cheeks dimpled in a merry smile. Someone who wants to help, you know. Her brow furrowed. Your name? Naruto. He gave it gladly. A most curious name indeed. Latenna looked at him again, then truly looked at him as she hadn't before. Drank every inch of him in. Her gaze alighted upon his chest and right arm, noting the markings there. Each glowered with eerie light, one gold, the other red. He seemed stronger for it, somehow. Sharper in her mind's eye. And why wouldn't he be? He'd slain 2 shard bearers. Latenna had never seen the like before, but she knew the make of a great rune. Everyone did, which meant this Tarnished just might be. 2 great runes, as I live and breathe. Awe escaped her with a whisper. It would seem I've underestimated you. And I, you. His smile faded as he noticed the black arrow still jutting from her thigh. Here, let me see your leg, said Smile stilled as he lifted her thigh. That's in there pretty deep. Her eyes bulged. He wouldn't dare. Eossi. He drawled the first word to calm her and fished a clean rand from his pouch. Here, bite down on this. Might hurt a little. Look, I can't heal you if that thing's still in there. His voice was warm as honey, yet not patronizing. Is it poison that seems to be a thing around these parts? Latenna glared bloody red daggers at him, but nodded all the same. Had he been anyone else, she would have told him what he could do with that rag, that he could bug her right off. But he'd healed her dear friend, helped her other half. Besides, Lobo did seem to like him. Her mount nosed her hand, urging her on. Lobo had ever been a good judge of character. He'd been wary of the all-hearing brute and his men from the first, even when she'd blindly trusted them. Surely if he believed in this one. With a sigh, she took the cloth from the golden man and bit into it. Right then, the man's head went down, brow furrowing. On 3, 1, 2, pain. Her world went red when the bastard pulled early. Her body bucked as she screamed into the cloth. Strong hands came down on her shoulders. In a moment of weakness she allowed herself to curl up against them. But only for a moment, because now those hands were moving past her, coming to rest on the wound of her ruined leg. She was in far too much pain to protest. Easy fix, don't you worry, she heard him mutter over the ringing in her ears. I've healed worse than this. You'll be right as rain in no time. Just breathe. With those words a strange warmth pervaded her being, like tiny sunbeams sliding under her skin. Before her eyes the blackened veins fled from her flesh like so much mist before the sun. In no time at all, the wound was all but closed. She ran a hand over it, marveling at the unmarked skin. How? He didn't stop there. Not done yet. Seems like there's something wrong with your legs. Shame darkened her features. We Albanurics have weak legs, she hastened to explain. Once we reach adolescence, we are unable to walk. That is why I have Labo. Latenna tried to speak further, only for a fresh convulsion to rack her body from head to toe. Little bolts of lightning raced through her veins, shattering her tenuous self-control. She thrashed backward. A hand caught her by the head and lowered her gingerly to the ground. She felt something pop in her back, then her hips, followed now by her femur and tibia. Last of all came her ankles, little motes of golden light dancing over her feet. Made her think of butterflies, it did. Now if only they didn't feel so strange. Lobo plonked down beside her and nosed at her shoulder. Worry not, she managed to touch his snout with a trembling hand. I feel fine. A startled cry fled from her lips as another jolt seized her body. Very fine indeed, if she was being honest. This felt good, very good, perfectly pleasant, really. Almost like something she would rather not speak of. Her beloved partner whined once and curled around her. Latenna wasn't sure how much time passed after that. Seconds, minutes, or perhaps an hour. At last, her unusual ally took his hands away, wiped a bead of sweat from his brow, and sat down beside her. The unusual golden glow fled from his body. She looked on curiously as those smoldering red eyes lashed their cross-shaped pupils and receded into gentle, shimmering blue. Oh dear, now that he wasn't shining like the sun he actually looked rather. So their owner asked of her, how do you feel? Latenna's mind fizzled. Biwa, whiskered cheeks dimpled in a surprisingly boyish grin. Not the answer I expected, but given you haven't tried to skewer me yet, I'll take that as a good sign. Ahem, she coughed into a fist, flushing fiercely. I feel better. My thanks you have, for your timely aid. Don't worry about it. He climbed to his feet. Here, stand up. She frowned at his words. You know that I cannot. You can now. His hand didn't waver. What did she have to lose? Her hand clasped his wrist, if only to prove a point. She whistled to Lobo first, however. Her other half moved in, ready to catch her if when she inevitably fell. But she didn't fall. It took her several seconds to realize it. She was standing, her hand in his, one of his arms looped around her waist to hold her steady as she looked up at him. At any other time Latenna might have flushed. Such thoughts were far from her end. Because she could stand, her legs trembled, yes, but not from weakness. She simply hadn't used them in some time. See, he grinned. Told ya. She drew back a little, wriggling out his arm while still holding to his hand. Lobo nudged up behind her for support and she unconsciously leaned against her beloved lupine friend. Did this man enjoy shattering her worldview so whenever she thought something was impossible, he blazed right past it? Or through it? First her dear Lobo, then her wound, now her leg's madness. Utter madness. Still, it was a good madness. She could get used to this. No. Focus. She had a mission to complete. Let's try again. Shall we? Mustering the tattered threads of her dignity, she sat up. I am Latenna, an Albanuric, as you can see. Her head bowed a little when he nodded in return. My apologies for my coarse words earlier. I presumed the worst, seeing that you were a Tarnished and whatnot, much like that brute. Please, forgive me. For a moment it looked like he might protest the title of Tarnished, but with a sigh, he shrugged. Nothing to forgive. I'm just glad you're all right. All right, she was more than all right. He'd given her legs again. Still, if he was willing to go so far for her once, perhaps he might yet again. Sought it. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, as the saying went. If it pleases you, Tarnished, would you consider doing me another service? Sure. His face hid no lie. If it's more arrows you're after, I know a guy. He can fix you right up. More ammunition, but he was certainly going out of his way to tempt her to his side. And succeeding. Well, then heat speared the back of her neck even as her face flushed with color. Bold, this one. Perhaps later, she said instead. First, I must go back. To my village. There is something that I must retrieve there, even it pains me. Will you help me avenge my people? Good Tarnished, she wasn't willing to telling him about the land of Miquella's hallow-tree. Not yet. Should he pass this last test well, she'd consider. If you accept, I would gladly appraise you of the whereabouts of the medallion's other half. And where does this medallion lead? She met his gaze stoically, refusing to flinch. I shall tell you when we have both halves. He nodded once. Fair enough. Thank you kindly. Yes, victory was hers. They say the other half of the medallion is beyond the Forbidden Lands, north of the Erdtree. She turned and pointed toward a distant peak, smiling a little when his gaze soon followed hers. You'll find it in Castle Sol beyond the capital, nestled within the mountaintops of the giants, accessible by the grand lift of Rold. Seems a bit of a walk, but sure. Again, he yielded to her request all too easily. I'll be headed that way eventually. But first tell me more about what happened to your village. Latenna did just that, sparing no grisly detail. She told her tale, a story of a people who wished only to be left in peace and the treacherous Tarnished that had come to them. Deceived them, slaughtered them, when they would not give him what he wanted. As she told her tale, she watched Naruto's face darken. By the time she finished, he looked fit to spit sparks. His eyes flickered red, then back to blue, red again, before finally centering on stormy cerulean once more. The man who did this, he paused, swallowed, then mastered his emotions before speaking. You never told me his name. Hadn't she? No matter, easily remedied. Gideon. Latenna turned her head and spat. He calls himself Sir Gideon Ofnir. Even claims to be all-knowing, brute that he is. His eyes flashed with recognition. The noise Naruto mad at the way he reacted to her words was more akin to a growl than a sigh, an alpha predator taking a deep breath before pouncing upon its prey. Something in it warmed her blood. She imagined him wringing that all-hearing's brute neck. The thought brought her a small bit of pleasure. Yes, she rather liked the idea of someone chalking the life out of that brute after she'd stuck a few arrows in him, of course. Once she tracked him down, there would be a reckoning. So she swore, and then her savior surprised her once more. If it's that bastard, then I think I'll have a few words with him. Latenna perked up. You know where he hides? I do. He admitted it freely. If this is true, she squeezed his hands. It is. Then I'll personally help you kick his ass once we're done with Liurnia. That's not right, what he did. He shook his head. If he really did that to your village, he'll pay for it. I promise. Her eyes met his, half-lidded in challenge. Do you swear? He lifted his chin. I don't go back on my word. Silence stretched between then, human and Albanuric alike. Neither budged until one of them finally did. Latenna found herself looking away first. Is that so? If this man, he who looked upon the Albanurics so kindly, were to become Elden Lord, there just might be a future for her people. Would that all Tarnished were like you? He really was, but she could feel herself smiling in spite of her worries nonetheless. What say you, Lobo? She turned to her loyal companion, ever at her side. My faithful wolf, my better half, shall we go with the Tarnished now, so that our journey will not have been in vain? Lobo gave her a pointed look and barked once in affirmation. It was as good an answer as any. On her new legs, Latenna sketched a clumsy bow. Very well, we will fight by your side. First she must go back to the village and check upon old Albus. Perhaps he yet lived. The old mage had ever been good at hiding himself when it suited him. Unbidden, her mind recalled happier times, times when she was but a child, a little girl, with no cares in the world. He always won their games of hide-and-seek. But there would be no more games now. No more laughter. Only sadness and sorrow. She stifled a pang of pain at the memory. If he was dead, she would avenge him. Yes, she would avenge them all. Revenge, yes. She would start with revenge. Great, he tugged her hands, inadvertently pulling her closer. Really, it's a good thing I found you and not one of my clones. They can't heal like I do, and things might not have turned out so well. Latenna blinked, drawn from her musings. Clone what, pray tell, is that? Well, he laughed. I've got a few boys wandering around. You'll probably meet them sooner or later. Castle Morne was a madhouse. Naruto's clone crept into the courtyard, swearing softly as he went. So many bodies. Just looking at it made him feel ill. Piles upon piles of corpses stacked upon another, cooked and burned, while the misbegotten howled their victory. He almost envied Erina her blindness. She'd never have to see this. But he had. He'd never forget it. Neither would the boss, once he dispelled himself. The sight was already seared into his soul. It made his very blood boil. He had to look away from it all, just to keep himself from flying into a blind rage. You all right back there? I am, sir. He frowned. Told you not to call me that. Erina dared a tentative nod, turning her sightless eyes in his direction. He couldn't see the entirety of her face thanks to the blindfold, but her lips were pursed into a thin white line. Poor girl. She couldn't see anything, but she could hear those monsters howling. Even she knew better than to speak above a whisper here. Doing so would just draw them down onto her. He'd not let that happen, even if it cost him this meager life of his. He dared to pat her head. Remember, stay put. He gave her a nudge. If you hear footsteps come your way, you take the lift back down. Even if they come after you, the fall should kill them. She nodded once. And what of you? He chose an easy answer. Gonna kill him. Erina balked, bless her sweet soul. All of them by yourself. Yup. His piece said, he marched to meet death. The original could heal Erina. Give her back her eyes. Be there for all the important stuff. The messy bits fell to him. And he was fine with that. Really, he was. He was just a clone after all. Really, it was a miracle he'd survived this long with what little chakra he had left. He had no way to reliably supply himself with more. He was running on fumes as it was. Best to go out with a bang and all, you know. The boss would get all his memories and emotions once he died anyway. He tilted his head back with a sigh. What a lovely day. The plan was simple. clear out the enemies, take the little miss to her old man, get them to the round table, then wipe out the rest if he still had the chakra for it. He liked simple. Simple was as simple does. Just like him. Easier that way. He'd never been one for complex plans outside of combat. Oi, he raised his voice. Over here. An angry misbegotten lunged at him. His fist scythed out, bisecting the cruel creature like wheat from so much chaff. Much to his surprise, it dropped in a single hit. Seriously, he considered his bloody fist with a frown. You're that weak, huh? Maybe this'll be easier than I thought, then. He patted his cheeks gently, careful not to dispel himself. Doing so would leave Arena a sitting duck. I can do this. Worry not. The rune on his finger sang, startling him. I shall see thee sustained until thy deed is done, until the girl is safe. The clone grinned. Thanks. Think not of it. Now kill these beasts. Rip and tear. Happily. For once, he actually agreed with the disembodied voice. Whoever she was, at least she had good taste. He unslung Godric's axe from his back and bellowed a war cry. All eyes turned toward him. The rest rushed him just as planned. Too slow. His arm was already winding up, hoisting the weapon high. Now how had that old fart done it again? Something along the lines of, shifting his grip on the half, he whirled and brought it crashing down. It struck with impossible force, splitting the earth. Once, twice, thrice, bodies flew through the air. He caught one by the tail as it sailed past and whipped it into another, rendering them both bloody stains on the wall. An startled wail went up from the others, but he didn't give them the chance to regret their actions. A quick leap and he was among them, repeating the process again. No mercy for you bastards. They couldn't touch him. Nothing could. Just as well, too, because he couldn't bring himself to stop. His blood was well and truly up now, consequences be damned. His armor proved a boon in that regard, allowing him to conserve what little chakra he had left and wade in. Tank hits that, as a clone, he might have otherwise avoided. Misbegotten, mad dogs, an odd creature with a metal head, none came close, and likewise, none of them were spared. These were crazed beasts, not people. Not like the boss, or even good old Hugh. He showed them no mercy. Rip and tear, until it is done. Such senseless slaughter. Neph couldn't bear the sight of it. Just looking upon the piled corpses made her sick. This village had not been slain. Slaying implied at least some small semblance of dignity, that the opposing party might have died with honor. But there was no honor here, was there? These harmless Albanurics had been slaughtered nearly to a man. What wretches remained, poor creatures dragging themselves across the ground, could barely be called sane. She'd seen such a slaughter before, back in the Badlands. It brought back unpleasant memories of her childhood. And all this, for what possible purpose could compel such madness? She didn't know. She didn't want to know, lest the same insanity take her as it had whoever had committed this heinous crime. These people had no weapons, no means of defending themselves. They were civilians, for God's sake. They clearly tried to crawl away before someone had set them ablaze. Fury frothed in her heart. Who would do such a thing? There, footsteps to her right, coming up the rise. Had the oppressors returned? She reached for her axes with a snarl. If they were still here, whoever had done this, she would cut them apart. Neph, a familiar voice crowed, bringing her up short. I thought that was you. Her eyes widened. Naruto, why are you here? Against all odds, it really was him. He wasn't alone, of course, nor did Neph expect him to be. New companions with him this time, a one-armed redhead she didn't recognize, and oh dear, that was most assuredly an Albanuric beside him, sitting astride a great direwolf. There was another smaller creature riding behind her, but she barely noticed the little demi-human. Because the woman's pale face was red with fury, eyes blazing with wrath. She looked all of an instant from drawing her bono. There it was. Warrior, she all but bit out the word. Speak thy name and intent, or die where you stand. Nothing to be had for it then. I am Neph. And you are. It was the wrong thing to say, because the woman's fury became downright apoplectic and the wolf snarled at her. Weapons came out. In an instant Neph found a bow knocked and drawn to her throat. Whoa, Naruto flung up his arms, anxious to prevent hostilities. No need for that, Latenna, she's a friend. I've fought with her before. She serves the all-knowing. The words made her flinch. This is his doing. We must kill her at once. What? Neph sprang to her feet. I knew not of this. My father would never. Latenna's bowstring drew tighter still. Wise. Hey, Naruto thrust himself between them. Let's just calm down. An arrow speared into his neck. A voice cried out. Light flashed and the deadly shaft ricocheted back the way it came, drawing a flinch from all parties present. Neph most of all. Blinking the spots from her vision, she found her situation reversed, for now it was the Albanuric woman her wolf pinned. Much to her surprise, Naruto wasn't the responsible party. His one-armed redhead had one boot on the beast's throat and soared to the Albanuric's neck, bright golden eyes burning with a rage all her own. One should not underestimate a cripple, Neph knew. This woman was deadly. If you ever, Millicent rasped, harm my lord in such a manner again, I will end you. Her scowl deepened when the archer tried to struggle. Perhaps I should do so now. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose and exhaled in a long-suffering sigh. Millie, let her go. But by Lord, she rounded on him, made incredulous by the nickname as much as his declaration. She shot you. No buts, I'm sure she didn't mean Torite, Latenna. Indeed. The Albanuric didn't dare nod, not with a blade to her neck, but she spoke quickly, all the same, almost as if she feared this man as much as respected him. Neph made note of it. That was not my intent. She was my target. You put yourself in harm's way. Her wolf whimpered beneath her. Please, forgive me my indiscretion. The little demi-human still sitting on the wolf's back dared to pipe up. Can't we all just get along? Quiet, Buck. Millicent, Naruto tutted. Be nice. Millicent looked like she'd rather take Latenna's head, but subsided under a withering look. There we go. We're all on the same side here. Naruto stepped between them without missing a beat. I'm sure we all want to find who's responsible for this mess, eh? Seeing her chance for redemption, Neph stepped up beside him. That was my intent to begin with. You needn't tell me twice. Latenna eyed her balefully. And if she betrays us? Naruto shook his head. She won't. What if she does? His eyes slid to her. Neph shivered. Then I'll deal with her myself. You have my word. He would, she knew. Something had hardened in him, awoken him to the cruelty of the world. A tan hand touched her and forced her bow down. Been a while, hasn't it? His voice had an edge to it that warmed her blood. That it has. Her smile soured when she looked back to the bodies heaped at their feet. What do you make of it? Then what's happened to this village? Nothing good. Putting it mildly, that. She turned her gaze up the hill where still more bodies could be seen. I witnessed a sight much the same in my infancy. Her lips thinned at the memory. The oppression of the weak. Murder and pillage unchecked. A waking nightmare made by men. Even now the reminder stung, her finger ground into fists at her sides. But this time I am a woman grown. And though the suffering cannot be undone, I can still mete out justice to the oppressors. She tore her axes free. Let the scars I carve remind them. I am Neph, warrior. Naruto nodded and clapped her shoulder. That you are. Now let's do this. Up they went, expecting great resistance. What few souls they encountered were gibbering idiots, mindless Albanurics broken by pain and torture. These at least, they put out of their misery with decisive blows, but of the invaders there was no sign. They finally found it in the form of depraved perfumer, a mad lunatic spewing a cloud of flame at them. Latenna drilled it through both eyes before Neph could hope to reach it. The creature fell with nary a sound. No one else dared to challenge them. Wait. Naruto cocked his head to one side, listening to a voice only he could hear. There's something here. Before she could think to have him elaborate, the whiskered warrior turned and walked back the way they'd come, trotting over the perfumer's corpse. Neph followed, frowning now when the bemused blonde reached a heavy-looking pot. He leaned over it, considering it with a keen eye. His fist swung up and came crashing down. A startled yelp answered him halfway, and quite suddenly there wasn't a pot there at all, but a person. With a shimmer of light, an illusion fell away to reveal a hunched old Mano, an old Albanuric clutching both hands to his chest. His head bowed, all but scraping the floor in fear. Ah, please, no, dear me, haven't a clue. Words flowed forth from him in a terrified wheeze. No secrets lie with me, not a one. Leave me be. The younger Albanuric nudged her mount forward. Albus, Latenna, but who is this with you? Wait, then, you're not one of them. Well, what a relief. A rasping cough shook his frail form. Oh, goodness me, I am Albus, an Albanuric, as you can see. We're finished. The whole village is finished. The cursemongers have destroyed everything. No one that remains has their wits about them. Neph drew back, feeling an intruder here in this moment. A witness to something terribly personal indeed. But she couldn't bring herself to plug her ears. She might not catch Naruto and Latenna's whispers, but she heard the old man's words. She heard them all. I beg you. The dying man held up a strange half-disc for Naruto and Latenna to see. Would you look after this medallion? You must keep it out of the cursemonger's hands. I fear I am not long for this world myself. Heck, cack, another rattling cough shook his wiry frame. A chosen land awaits us Albanurics. The medallion is the key that leads to the city. It's only a quaint treasure for we who cannot make the journey. No, Latenna, do not speak. You do this old man proud. Fulfill your purpose. My legs will soon fade, and with them, my life. Alas, this is the immovable fate of all Albanurics. I'm so glad you escaped it. Latenna came back, tears in her eyes, clutching half a medallion to her chest. No words were needed. Across the bridge they went, dispatching the mad souls in their path. Neph could feel Millicent's steely gaze blazing into her back the whole way until they saw it. A great bonfire burned beneath a twisted tree, piled high with fresh corpses. Dozens of bodies, men, women, children, all heaped atop one another. Fuel for the fire. There was something here. Something else. She saw it at last, a masked figure standing before a raging flame. Omen killer. This was no mere human. He was a beast in the shape of a man, an emotionless husk that lived for but one purpose. To kill and kill and kill, to slaughter all those who might stand in the way of the Golden Order. Omens, for one, were their favorite prey. But there were no omens here, where there someone must have lured it here. And she knew whom. Latenna hollered in heartbreak. Fiend. The abomination turned to face them and brandished its twisted cleavers with a roar. Naruto didn't roar back. Far from it. He started swearing. She heard not but three words within. Rotten piece of. The Omen killer bounded forward. Naruto reached up to his back and drew two paired black greatswords. Wait, black greatswords were those. To call what followed a fight would have been generous. Neph didn't just see them collide, she heard it, felt it rattle her very teeth. The impact rooted her where she stood. A glowing hail of arrows skewered the Omen killer's right knee, causing it to buckle. Naruto stepped in and smashed a boot into its chest, flinging it back. The mad creature went berserk, laying about with its wretched cleavers, flaying the very ground around it, only to be summarily rebuffed as those twin black blades came crashing down. An arm flew through the air. Millicent flowed up, over, around, then down, and quite suddenly Omen Killer found its face smashed into the ground. Latenna's bow sang and a hail of arrows sprouted from the beast's chest. Naruto raced in on its heels, drawing its attention with a wary cry. A twisted cleaver slammed into his shoulder. Naruto looked down at it. Up at the Omen Killer. Down again. I'm sorry, he frowned. Was that supposed to do something? Clenched knuckles roared up at speed. His attacker rocketed into the air, struck a twisted tree, and slumped down atop a pile of corpses. Anyone else would have died from the impact. And yet this fiend struggled upright, bones twisted, body mangled, seeking its next victim. Neph didn't give it that chance. Even as it staggered upright, she stepped in and slashed down with her axes. The Omen Killer took the wound without so much as a word. Less so when Millicent appeared beside her and drove her shamshir blade through the beast's ribs. Caught unawares, the emotionless monstrosity staggered, which in turn gave Naruto time to reach them. Radon's greatsword sang a mournful dirge in his hands and carved into the towering abomination, driving it down on a ruined knee. It was a foregone conclusion after that. The three of them ripped and tore, slashed and hewed, fought as they were meant to. It was over in a matter of moments. Naruto stood tall over the cruel creature's corpse. His eyes were wild, chest heaving from adrenaline. Their eyes met and Neph felt something stir in her. Her blood quickened, singing in her veins. She took a step forward. Latenna beat her to it all but leaping off her wolf and into his arms. Naruto caught her with a grunt. She flung herself against him, not to embrace him, but to cry, burying her head in his chest. Any desire Neph might have felt cooled in that moment, tamped down to fading embers. It's over, the poor Albanuric murmured into his shoulder. It's finally over. They've been avenged. Well, now didn't she feel the fool? No matter. So the Albanuric warrior was keen on him, was she? Well, she was a warrior herself, daughter to Horalu. She wouldn't give up that easily. A warrior fought for what they wanted, no matter the obstacles they might encounter, no matter the competition they might face. She would stand by him, even if she had not yet earned that right. No, not yet, she hadn't. But she was determined to try. Irina loathed her blindness. Her lack of vision had ever been a constant companion to her since she was a child, an accursed, inescapable handicap that hounded her every step. She could no sooner escape from it than she could cease to breathe. It was a part of her, no matter how much she despised it. Had her father not been who he was, she suspected she would have been cast out long ago. Yet here, in this moment, she almost considered it a blessing. She'd heard such awful sounds, ripping and tearing, the screaming of monsters, the clashing of steel. What an awful sight it must have been. It had gone on forever, an endless cacophony of the dying and the damned, and she had no doubts as to who was responsible for it all. It should have frightened her, but it didn't. Strange as it might sound, their screams comforted her. Sir Naruto must be a most powerful knight indeed, even if he claimed not to be one. Who else but a knight could be so brave? Surely he deserved a reward. And now the world had gone silent. Somehow, that was worse. So much worse. None of those awful misbegotten had come her way. Not once. But she couldn't hear anything now. Even the dogs were dead. He must have wiped out the courtyard, then gone up to the parapets to cleanse the rest of the castle. He must have. Surely he was still alive. He wouldn't leave her. Not after all this. Surely. Hello, she dared to call out into the silence. Good sir, are you there? A hand patted her shoulder. Irina nearly jumped out of her skin. It's safe. His voice was lower, more weary, but still strong. Come on. Strong fingers took her by the hand. Let's go find your old man. Hand holding how forward, and yet Irina found herself squeezing his palm tightly, clinging on for dear life. Well, that settled it, then. He was her knight. She would sooner die than desert him. They reached the academy in silence. It was there that Naruto received a most unpleasant bit of news. Wait. So what you're telling me is, he cracked his neck and gazed up at the academy proper. This Rennala lady, she's a prisoner in her own home. She's also quite mad, or so the stories go, Millicent chimed. But yes, as much a prisoner to that as I am to the rot. It was the wrong thing to say, yet also the right. He pivoted in place and opened his senses. Sure enough, he felt it. Something powerful, sad, heartbroken. But mad. He'd seen madness, even experienced it a time or two himself. This didn't feel like madness. No, if anything it felt an awful lot like, well, now that was strange. Very strange indeed. His eyes narrowed. I'll be right back. Should we not wait for Greyrol and Melina to return? They've been gone an awful long while. Nah, I just need a minute. Neph frowned. Wait, what do you mean a may? Her worlds trailed off behind him as he gathered his legs, tensed up, and leaped right at the main spire. He crossed both arms before his face and smashed through. Kept smashing, as gravity dragged him down one level, then the next, sending him hurtling through another now, yet another and another still. Mad, was she? Well, they'd just see about that. Naruto knew a thing or two about madness himself. Rennala was not mad. Madness implied a lack of sanity, that she was no longer capable of rational thought. Many might think her such indeed, perhaps to them, she was. The world believed her to be a broken woman past her prime and out of her mind. Beyond her ken, unable to cope with heartbreak and the tragedy that had befallen her family in the wake of the shattering. Was not true, of course. She was quite sane. She had simply ceased to care about the outside world, just as it had ceased to care about her. Why should she care? For that matter, what did it matter who fought or ruled past these walls? Most had betrayed her, and those who hadn't were even now suffering fates worse than death. They were, all of them, forsaken. Such was their lot in life. So would it remain until the sun ceased to burn in the sky, and so too would she remain here in isolation with her sweetings until the day she died. Geronimo. Thus it came as something of a surprise, yes, a very great surprise indeed, when the ceiling ruptured overhead and a golden meteor came hurtling through. He crashed through. For a wild moment she thought he was going to crash into her, but no, he changed course in midair and landed in a pointed crouch, one hand flung forward and a fist to catch himself. Her precious sweetings tumbled backward, stunned, but unharmed. Heh, she heard him chuckle as he stood. Always wanted to try a superhero landing, you know. It really is hell on the knees. From there he straightened, took a good long look at her and kept staring. Desolate though she was, Rennala was still queen of the full moon. She had her dignity if nothing else. If he didn't stop at this instant she would sick her sweetings on him. Geez, you're a real tall lady, ain't you? You'd make Grero look small. Rennala frowned. She frowned hard. Oops, he balked after a moment, only to surprise her by bowing at the waist. Sorry about your ceiling. I was kinda in a hurry. Who was this bold blonde braggart barging into her home? Clearly he did not seek rebirth. Yet though he was armed and armored for battle, he made no move to attack her, nor to draw his weapon Zando. Oh dear, she saw his swords then, truly saw the black blades nestled against his back, as she hadn't before. Smaller perhaps, but she recognized the make of them all the same. Her heart hitched against her chest, kicking painfully between her breasts. It could not be. It should not be. It must not be. It was. Radon. The young man flinched. How do you know that name? His swords. She barely choked the words out. How do you have those weapons? Speak. Rennala leaned forward, looming large over him. Where did you find those blades? Didst thou grant my son his rest? Speak true, or I shall smite you where you stand. The man in dragon armor was silent for a moment, his face twisted in momentary anguish. Not of her. He did not fear her. No, she knew he was recalling a more recent pain. Did it involve her son? What had he done to him? His stoicism did little to soothe her already ragged nerves. Why wouldn't he speak? At length he did. You're his mother, aren't you? I'm so sorry. A lone tear rolled down her cheek. I tried to save him. Really, I did. The blonde hastened to explain, face darkening with shame. But he wouldn't let me. Sorry. He looked away, scratching at the back of his head. I gave him pace. He seemed to see something past her, whatever it was. It made him shiver and swing his gaze back to her. I'll leave the swords here with you, but if it's a fight you want, you won't get it, I can tell. Again he looked away, unable to meet her gaze overlong. Please, don't make me fight you. Another tear rolled from her left eye, touched her cheek, ran down her chin. Radon, her baby boy. Wait, what was the Tarnished doing now? You seem said. Rennala blinked as the baffling blonde sat down before her and patted the space beside him. Want to talk about it? She found herself complying. Physically, at least. No, the blonde boy blinked, no doubt taken aback by the sudden change in her demeanor. To the talking, or the fight? Neither. She was filled with sorrow, yes, but beneath it lurked relief, for now she knew at least one of her children was finally free from suffering. There was a part of her that believed little Ranni was still out there, in the world somewhere. Perhaps she suffered even now. Maybe thinking such was a madness of its own. Radon, thankfully, was at peace. She could take some semblance of solace in that. She prayed that he had died as a man rather than a monster, because one such monster still lived. I thank thee for thy service, noble Tarnished. Her gaze traveled to his right arm, where Sun's great rune still burned even now. A thought occurred to her, little more than an arrow in the dark, but still, it spurred her to speak. Do you seek the great rune so that you might become Elden Lord? His face turned a curious shade of red. It's complicated. Such a kind boy. To rebirth him would be truly a waste. And she was so very lonely. I will gladly grant thee mine Rune of Rebirth. She offered her egg to him, if he would but grant me a boon. Anything. She turned stern eyes on him. Moment of truth. Please, slay my second son as you slew Radon. Silence stretched between them. His jaw clicked open, closed, opened again. Tall lady, say what now? I would have you do as you have already done before. So be it. No going back now. She was set on this course. His name is Rykard. He dwells in the Volcano Manor. Once he was a man, but now, the words lodged in her throat for a moment, and she faltered, he has become a terrible beast. You will know him when you see him. Swear that you will see this done, and I shall swear both myself and my rune to thee. His eyes widened, perhaps misunderstanding her meaning. You're serious about this? This is your kid you're talking about. T would be a mercy. Do you accept my terms? He looked away, scratched his chin, sighed. No. Yes, I do. So how does this work? I've never had someone give me a great rune before. She hummed a little. Be still. He did not flinch as she took the rune from the egg, nor did he speak when branded it against the side of his throat. Not once did he cry out. It was a fitting trade, she felt. This way, he would have the last say in any who might yet be reborn properly. Provided they brought a larval tear to her, of course, but she was getting ahead of herself. Her eyes swept back to him now, watching intently as he massaged his neck. Oh, he grunted, touching a hand to the silver marking. Stings a little, but I'll manage. His eyes met hers then, riveting her. You're coming with me, right? Despite her best efforts to remain calm, Rennala felt heat creep up the back of her neck. I beg your pardon. With me, he repeated, holding out a hand. You want closure, right? I'll be happy to help you. Unbidden, her fingers twitched towards his. Hesitated. Now, when he didn't waver in the face of her confusion. You truly accompany me for so little. His smile was sunshine itself. What can I say? I like helping. It's what I do, you know, come on. He wiggled his arm at her. Take my hand. Everything's gonna be all right. Rennala reached the rest of the way and claimed his hand with hers. Oddly enough, she believed him. Such a strange Tarnished. And his fingers were so very warm. Hey, and careful, Naruto. You really are too pure for your own good, and you're attracting all sorts of attention. That was one of the longer chapters I've written. Phew, writing this really wore me out. Latenna and Neph really stole this chapter until Rennala swooped in at the end. Well, did you like this story? Yes, no, maybe? Speak up, make yourselves heard, your voice matters. Once more, we're sticking with the Embers rule for this story. If folks don't like this, it won't be continued. Meaning that if the story itself ain't popular, poof, gone. Completely. I'm working 2 jobs during the holidays, so I barely have time to write as such. I cannot afford to write something folks don't enjoy. So by all means, speak up, your voice matters, make yourself heard. As ever, reviews are the fuel that sustain me. Without them I cannot write a single word. Simple as that. So in the immortal words of Atlas, review, wouldst thou kindly, and have some previews. Some are quite off, but still. Rennala next time, for sure. The door to Gideon's chamber smashed open. Blazing blue eyes met his across the desk. You, words, now, shhhh, lean back, relax. Raya squeaked. Why are you patting my head? You know, I'm no sure really. I didn't say stop. Off with the mask. I won't speak to someone who hides themselves behind a facade. Much to his surprise, Tanith complied. Huh, how could someone so beautiful have such a twisted heart? He's going to help her kill Rykard. Don't try to stop him. When you say kill, Radon was to be pitied. That monster will not be. Rennala raised her scepter at the serpent. Rykard, I would have words with thee, show thyself at once. Finally done hiding, are you? Melina was silent for a long moment. Then she sat beside him. Her head came to rest against his bloody shoulder. As he looked on, her good eye closed. I wish to tell you a story. And you call yourself a bloody finger? See, Mir, I'll show you bloody. Glintstone Dragon Smaragd was not happy to see them. Greyrel thumbed her chin. I do not understand. This one has ever been a good child. He's got crystals growing out his skull. If you think for 1 second she's sane after that. She, actually. I thought that thing was a boy. So do most. Mother, see, I'm starting to realize something. She was right. Maybe I am broken. His victim gurgled at his feet. But I do not care. He stabbed down. I call upon you, Tarnished. Fulfill your promise. Grant me vengeance against the all-hearing brute. If you're sure that's what you want, Latenna. Yes, please, grant my request. You know nothing. Why'd you do it? Beneath the shadows of his helm, Gideon Ofnir felt a faint frown crease his pale face. He didn't deign to look up from the papers strewn atop his desk. Ah, sentiment. Such weakness. He should have known Neph would falter. The girl was a useful tool, but she had only ever been that. A tool, a weapon to accomplish a singular purpose. He'd always known time and experience would blunt her edge sooner or later. Still, he'd hoped to get more use out of her before she finally succumbed. Father, please answer me. Mewling whelp. Whining on like that. Who did she take him for? You ask me why? Here at last he raised his gaze to look her in the eye. She glared back at him, palms spread upon the table, face mere inches from his own. You know full well the reason. No, don't make that face. He silenced her with a wave of his hand when she made to protest. I will not hear of it. The Elden Ring is all that matters. Anything else is a secondary concern at best. Another lie, alas. None must take the throne. All knowledge must be his, all in order to prevent such a terrible occurrence, including the medallion. Secondary, the whelp reared back as if she'd been struck. Even me. A curious twinge hit his heart. He strangled it. Even you. But why, she demanded to know. Why hurt those poor people for the medallion? Where does it lead? Into what? To a land beyond the mountains. He answered in kind. I came to them in good faith. They refused to grant my request. I asked only the medallion of them. No more. They were the ones who forced that fight. They were helpless. She didn't believe it, neither him nor the half-truth he dangled before her. A pity. My men weren't. The words hung between them. And you butchered them. She snarled at him. As they butchered those innocents. Gideon tried to leash his temper. It slipped free. Innocents, she said. Dolores had been innocent. And he knew full well what happened to her. A good woman, slain. Made a puppet by Seluvis, once his friend turned rival, that slimy snake. And this whelp dared to speak of such to him. There are no innocents. He thumped a fist down on the table. Not anymore. There was a time when you understood this. When she didn't answer, another suspicion reared its ugly head in his heart. That blonde oaf's gotten to you, hasn't he? You were to observe him. Not spread your legs for him. Her face flushed further. Father, no, that's not what this is about. He was. He knew much, and he realized what she did not. Fool of a girl. She was useless now, isn't it? He shook his head. If you cannot see the necessity of what I do, then I have no further use for you. She flinched. What are you saying? Go. Get out of my sight. I've no need of your services any longer. Bright eyes darkened beneath his rebuke. He wondered if she might cry. No, ignore that. Sentiment would only weigh him down. He couldn't afford such fleeting feelings. Go serve that oaf if he pleases you so. Neph pushed her hands off the table and loomed over him, shoulders trembling. Her hands twitched at her sides, clenching into fists. For a moment Gideon thought she might actually try to strike him. As if she could do such a thing. The pact remained sacrosanct. Even now those most ancient magics prevented any such violence in the Round Table hold. She knew not how to pierce it, and he'd not tell her in any case. She did look furious, though. He is a better man than you. Her words stirred old, dark anger in him. Watch your tongue, girl, or I'll eventually pluck it out. You needn't worry about that. Something curious played across her face. I've said my piece and heard enough. Her piece said, she stalked out. Gideon watched her go, shook his head as she slammed the door behind her. Blast it, such a willful lass. He would commend her spirit, but none would take the throne. Certainly not her. All knowledge would flow unto him, and with it, the power to prevent foolish upstarts like her from upsetting the status quo. Everything would remain as it was. Queen Marika had high hopes for them, that they continue to struggle. Unto eternity. Think if you know her will, little man. What in blazes? Gideon paused, craned his neck about, but there was no one in the room. The hearth dimmed for a moment, then flared anew. He sighed and stifled a yawn behind one hand. What was that? Must be his imagination. He wasn't getting enough sleep. Perhaps later. He still had files to contend with, intelligence to file through, ciphers from his spies to decode. There was much to do. Plucking up the latest such missive drew a scowl to his lips. It was that Naruto lad again. His party was making inroads in Liurnia. Did he seek Rennala's Rune? Getting too big for his britches, that one. Might need to deal with him soon. No matter. Ensha would take care of it. He had friends here at the Round Table. Weaknesses. Easy to exploit. It was merely of a matter of whom. Roderica, Hugh, or perhaps the still recovering Trish. Best be rid of her soon. The tree sentinel was not a foe he'd wish to contend with, and he wasn't sure if she was bound by the pact. The door to his chambers crashed open, shattering that thought. Gideon's head snapped up. Panic bleated in his heart. No, come. The pact persisted. The hold was, by definition, a place where most Tarnished were forbidden from harming one another. The ways around it were known to him and only him and no other. Whoever this newcomer was, this brutish display of violence would avail them not. Answer to me. Something shot through the shattered door, bounced off Gideon's desk, and skittered to a halt at his feet. An empty helmet carved from steel and gone. A familiar helm. He had all of an instant to see Ito look up from his desk and behold what caused the ruckus. Realization dawned. So his invasion failed. A pity, but not unexpected. He looked up, half expecting to see the tree sentinel woman wading her way through the wreckage. Instead he beheld a familiar face, tawny blonde hair, blue eyes, whiskered cheeks even now set in a scowl bordering on bloody murder. He saw the 3 great runes etched into his flesh. 3. He'd worn 2 only a few days before. Bollocks. Seemed the little fool had been busy since he'd seen him last. Must have felled Rennala and taken her great rune for himself. How many more runes would he claim? Would his lust for power never be satisfied? Hello, Gideon. But none of that mattered now, because those blazing blue eyes met his across the desk and he was speaking to him. Let's have a chat. Gideon lifted his chin in stoic defiance. Talked with the girl, did you? Among other things. Naruto didn't lean over the desk as Neph had. There was no need for that, his presence alone commanded enough weight. You could stand to be a bit nicer to her, you know she's your daughter. Foster daughter, he corrected reflexively. The blonde hummed. It was a dangerous sound. I'm aware. You've already heard. Indeed, it seemed the whelp harbored suspicions. So I had no further use for her. He didn't miss the way those gloved hands curled into fists. Honestly, what's a man to do? There could be no mistaking it now, the faint twitch of the blonde's jaw. A determined plebeian is more wicked than an Omen horn, quite frankly. I suspect that's just what the queen wants. A dose of ambition to incite the Tarnished. You'd know a thing or two about that, wouldn't you? Gideon frowned. I beg your pardon. Ambition. Naruto picked up a book and turned away, humming thoughtfully to himself as he thumbed through its pages. A log crackled in the hearth, shadow and flame flickered across the young man's downturned face. You know it well. A blue eye glanced back at him and for a moment, a fleeting sliver of a second, it almost sounded as if someone were speaking with him. How can you not? You always were the grasping sort, ever reaching above your station, clamoring for more than your hands could hold. Small wonder she pitied you. A strange feeling twisted in Gideon's chest. He'd heard those words once before, but not from this man. Radon nonsense. Radon was dead and gone. Naruto bore his great rune. But it is in man's very nature to grasp, isn't it now? He almost sounded like Godric. The key is knowledge. No, he realized. Not Godric, sharper somehow. Wiser. Godwin. Knowing when to stop and be happy with what you have. Some know when to be satisfied. Other authors are greedy. Those words felt like a slight against his very soul. Are you greedy, Gideon? Enough he would not be baited by this brash boy. I do what I must. As do we all. We certainly do, don't we? The retort was delivered calmly, as though they were discussing the weather and not a potential maiming. All of us, each of us, do what we deem necessary. Satisfied with the tome he had selected, the blonde stowed it into his pack and picked up another, idly leafing through it. 3 seconds passed. 6, now. 9. Gideon waited for the other shoe to drop, and it surely did. But the way you butchered those poor Albanuric's blue eyes rose over the book to stare into his soul. Was that necessary? For the sake of the Elden Ring. Cut the crap. A fist thumped down and the words died in his throat, his confidence faltering in the face of those no-gold eyes. I'll warn you this once. You better have a damn good reason for what you did. Because if you killed those people just because it was easier. As if he would be intimidated by such a remark. My reasons are my own. I hardly need explain myself to a whelp like you. Naruto's shadow twisted behind him, taking on the likeness of a graying fox. Thought you might say that. Clearly we have nothing more to discuss. He looked back to his papers. You may leave, now. Wrong response. Those azure orbs narrowed to cerulean slits. Trish, take him. Something impossibly large and terribly fast barreled through the remnants of the ruined door, vaulted the desk, and seized Gideon by both shoulders. Overpowered him, despite his struggles. Not enough to hurt or harm, but easily able to wrestle him out from behind cover all the same. In short order he found himself driven to the floor, head pressed into a dusty pallet. A knee slammed down into his back, forcing him lower still. His joints creaked ominously. Even then Gideon felt no fear. He craned his neck back, beheld the gilded, golden armor of his captor, and knew who had him. The blasted sentinel woman. You can't kill me. He sneered at her. You wouldn't dare. Your oath won't allow it. Her scarred face twisted in a silent scowl. She tightened her grip on him. His helmet began to buckle around his head. Hold, little one. A soft, unfamiliar voice spoke somewhere over their heads, giving her pause. If we break the pact of the Round Table, if you butcher him here, the hold will no longer be a place of peace. Tarnished will slaughter one another wholesale. Your precious spirit tuner will not be safe, to say nothing of the smith. Gideon smirked silently in his helm. The bloody blonde didn't. What do you propose? Why, that's simple. He still couldn't see the speaker, but he heard the smile in their voice. Take him elsewhere. That sounds grand. Yet another voice hummed. Trish, keep him still. Horror broke like the dawn in his mind. Take him out the hold. No, they couldn't, they wouldn't. His back arched beneath the blonde's knee, body bucking violently. Too little, too late. Firm fingers tightened on the back of his head. Golden grace flashed. The world folded in on itself, taking his stomach with it and bringing on a profound pang of nausea. He must have blacked out for a moment, for when he came to, the hard floor was gone, replaced by a carpet of soft grass. A cursory glance confirmed his suspicions. This wasn't the hold at all. He didn't know where this was. Somewhere in Lerna, perhaps he could see the Academy of Rhea Lucaria in the distance and the light of the Ur-tree besides. But beyond that, the waning light of the setting sun cast everything in shadow. He liked it not. He'd never liked the dark. An all too familiar voice dragged him back to reality. Must we do this? We tried it your way, Neph. Now it's her turn. Here at last, dread seized Gideon. They dragged him out the hold. Such shouldn't be possible. Not without consent. Such required ancient magic, spells long since lost in the shattering. He tried to move, but that stupid sentinel had an iron grip on him, and her master was glaring bloody red daggers at him. There were others with him, a redhead he vaguely recognized from the hold Ando. He saw Neph with them, and there, behind her, the Albanuric woman. Her eyes sharp and posture tense, standing on her own 2 feet, wolf at her side. So this was how it was to be, then he'd been had. Trish grabbed his helm and tore it free, exposing his face to the waning light. He squinted against it with a snarl. Gideon Ofnir. The Albanuric woman he'd never bothered to learn him name stepped forward and drew her bow. You stand accused of genocide against my people. How do you plead? He knew nothing he said would convince her of the necessity of it all. In her eyes, he was already damned. What a sad state of affairs this is. So he sneered at her instead. So you've slipped into his good graces too. Then what did this one promise you? Salvation for your people. Killing me won't bring them back. You know this. Whatever miracle has been bestowed upon you will die with you. A peal of laughter, short and sharp, silenced him. You'd like to think that, wouldn't you? She reached down and seized him by the chin, pinching his face. But you're wrong, O whole-hearing brute. So very wrong. Someday, a new generation of Albanuric shall live through me. She touched a free hand to her flat stomach. Happy, healthy, and free of your kind's interference. This is the moment everything changes. He didn't miss the way the blonde buffoon flushed. Was he sweet on the woman? Didn't matter. His gaze sought out Naruto's allies, from the steadfast swordswoman to the timid seamster. Each glared at him in silent anger. He found no footholds there. There was another with them, standing in the shadows of the trees, but he couldn't see them. In a fit of rage, he squirmed against the sentinel holding him and glared her way. And you, then he cast a black look at Neph. You would turn your coat for a man such as this. You must realize he'll fail. Neph held his gaze and looked away. I tried to reason with you, father. This is for the best. He hissed. Your birth father never loved you. Horror cast you aside out of shame. Neph flinched. That's a lie. Naruto chimed in. Nice try. And what have you? Gideon glared his way, spiteful now that he knew these to be his final moments. Do you think you'll be any different than those who came before you? You won't succeed. You'll falter, boy. Poison crept into his words, bubbling with venom. Just like Vike, Bernal, and all the rest. And even if by some miracle you survive, even if you make it all the way there, your work will be for naught. He strained against his bonds, lips parting in a twisted rictus of a grin. Your maiden will die. Trish snarled and cuffed the back of his head. Didn't matter. Gideon took sadistic joy in the uncertainty that flashed across the man's face. Why should I believe a word you say? He grinned through bloody teeth. She hasn't told you. Has she? Asked her, then call to her. Your joy shall turn to ashes in your mouth. The others tensed. Gideon saw his opportunity. Fools the lot of you, he spat a cloud of shadows to blind them and slipped free in the chaos. I will not go quietly, you shall rue the day you're crossed. Moonlight pierced the darkness and struck him low in the chest. Physically blasted through him in the chest, tearing a hole through his ribs. Blood burst from his lips as he slumped to his knees. A quivering hand cupped at his wound. He mumbled a healing incantation, but the injury refused to close. Another came and went, to no avail. Death, this was death. He could feel his life force slipping away. He fumbled for his flask, only for another to rip it from his grasp. Little Gideon, a familiar voice crooned from the waning mists. Did you forget who it was that taught you such spells all those years ago? He forced himself upright on trembling limbs and looked upon his killer. No, they, never, not her, anyone but her. Rennala, queen of the full moon, smiled down at him. T was not a pleasant smile by any means or measure. She was just as he remembered her, worse, she looked perfectly sane. Had his spies been wrong after all? This was not a woman past her prime. Not by any means or measure. He could feel the power thrumming within her, see that strange egg of her slung over her shoulder in a strange satchel. Wretched madwoman, he flung up a barrier and hurled a comet spell her way. You should have stayed in the academy. Mad, the taller woman laughed, a rich, husky sound that filled him with dread. I am rusty, dear, not mad. Her brow furrowed, promising pain. And you have forgotten your place. Her staff tapped down and his spell evaporated, ripping his barrier away with it. You call yourself the all-knowing poor boy. You know nothing. Gideon gurgled in shock and prepared a counterspell, only for her to return the favor tenfold. Just as you know not of fear, his body buckled as another hole opened in his torso, because you have never felt it, until now. She smiled as he raised an arm. A torrent of moonlight blasted it off at the shoulder. Here, let me show you just what it feels like to experience true terror. Escape. He had to escape before it was too late. Gideon tried to stand. His left leg buckled, dragging him down instead. He glared at it, not quite comprehending when or how he'd taken an arrow to the knee. The Albanuric woman drew her string back. He knew what was to come. He spat a curse, not at her, but that blasted blonde. I know in my bones a Tarnished cannot become a lord, not even you. A man cannot kill a god. But he is no man. A beautiful golden voice pierced his haze. And you are. Behold the futures you sought to forestall. Futures time slowed to a crawl. Gideon's world went white. For an instant he saw something. In that single blessed instant, he was granted vision, sight of a possible future to come. A new world, beautiful and gold, of songbirds and sunshine, of children's laughter. The Ur-tree stood tall over it all, but it was not as he knew it. Looking upon it brought him a strange sense of peace, a happiness to fill his hollow heart. This future wasn't certain, not set in stone, yet real enough to touch. He took a faltering step towards it and the scene changed, replaced by another. More, yet more, countless of them. Epiphany broke like the dawn and Gideon understood. He had been blind. This was one of many endings, a future that might yet be more than that. There were many worlds beyond this one, each of them bearing an Ur-tree of their own. He glimpsed them as one might a reflection through a broken mirror, countless worlds, endless stories beyond stories spinning around him. In some he was an ally of the Tarnished. In others, an enemy. At times, they never met at all. Some tales ended poorly. Most didn't. Yet more ventured into other worlds, lands of fading fire, of hunters and beasts, of a one-armed wolf raging against impossible odds, of others not yet born. It was too much knowledge for Gideon's mind to bear. He broke, shattering under the impossible weight of the truth. He saw himself in one such fractured image, a world beyond this. A younger iteration of himself lying in a field of flowers with Dolores, a young Neph resting in her lap. His heart ached. He'd been wrong. Terribly, horribly wrong. He reached for that dim image, wishing for nothing more than to pull himself through. He wanted it, needed it, craved it like nothing else. Gideon strained for it with his remaining arm. Yes, he would drag himself through and then it was gone, snatched out his grasp like a loaf of bread, leaving him wanting more. Reality rushed back in and Gideon was left to stare death in the face, the slender shaft even now hurtling toward him. No, come back, give it back, he gibbered, grasping for the grace he could no longer see. I want to see it, I have to see it, let me see it again. Nay, the voice denied him. This is your penance, your punishment. An arrow slammed through Gideon's skull. His head snapped back. Blood flew through the air. Pain blossomed. But death did not come. Not quickly. He slumped over, thoughts lingering as darkness swarmed in. The Albanuric woman drew a long hunting knife from her belt and raised it high over his neck. He knew what she intended. She would take his head as a trophy, paraded around the lands between like some grisly prize. Such was his fate. It was the least he deserved. The sun set. Her blade screamed down. It was the last thing Gideon saw. Neph traipsed away from his corpse. She had to, rather, she must, for to stare over long at Gideon's headless body any longer would surely make her sick. She couldn't bear to watch her allies strip him of his valuables. Everything was taken from the all-knowing, both possessions and runes divvied up among the lot of them. Latenna took his head and helmet. Rennala laid claim to his staff. Millicent fused over the notes he'd had on him, and now she turned a weather eye to his boots, for her own were in sore need of repair. Even little Bach was taking place in the looting, fussing over the man's cape and boots. Naruto alone stood apart from it all, and so it was to him she went. He faced away from her, eyes set upon the lakes and the ruined gate down below it. Melina stood by him in a rare moment of solidarity, but the words they shared were not kind. Aren't you telling me?" he hissed at her as she drew near. "There's nothing to tell, Tarnished," she murmured. "Nothing has changed. The purpose I was born for is to die." He rounded on her and Neph froze, not liking the look on his face. "Look me in the eye. Tell me it isn't true." Melina couldn't. Neph pitied her for it. She shouldn't linger her, shouldn't listen. But she couldn't help herself. A bitter laugh welled up from Naruto. Sure enough, he was the first to look away. "So that's it, then you're just going to sacrifice yourself when after we reach the capital." Neph paused. Gideon's parting words rang in her mind. Had he spoken the truth? Regardless, Melina didn't speak. Naruto made an anguished noise. "At least let me know when." Her lone eye flitted up to meet his. "If I tell you when, will you try to stop me?" "Of course I will." His forehead butted against hers, and to Nephili's dismay, the maiden actually leaned into him a little. "You're important to me." She tried to pull away at that, but he wasn't having it. His hands settled about her waist, holding fast. "I'm not about to let you stand aside and throw yourself on the pyre." She flinched at the last word and Naruto zeroed in on it. Clever boy that he was. "Aha, it has something to do with fire, doesn't it? Cease, have you not taken enough from me?" Tarnished anger burned in Melina's gaze, crackling in her voice like unspent flame. "Must you subvert my purpose, too?" "Stop that." His hand snapped up and cupped her by the face. "I'm not trying to subvert anything, I just don't want to say goodbye. I don't want you to die." Her head drooped, if only for a moment. "You." Naruto blinked, anger fading. "Me, you infuriating man." Melina's face rose. Her palm went with it. Neph winced, knowing full well what was about to happen. She was too far away to stop it. There wasn't a thing she could do. She needn't have. Naruto took one hand from Melina's cheek and caught her by the wrist. The annoyed noise he made said this was commonplace between the two of them. In the same seamless movement he snatched up her other arm, blocked a furious kick with his left knee, pivoted, and slammed her back against the nearest tree. A shower of leaves rained down on their heads. Neither seemed to notice. Melina certainly didn't. Her composure shattered and she flung herself at the Tarnished like a shedevil, hissing and kicking him with singular fury. Absolute oaf. She headbutted him. He took it with good grace and stopped a knee from planting itself in his groin. Sassy maiden. For a moment she thought the maiden might kiss him. She stomped on his foot instead. Self-sacrificing blonde buffoon, says the one who wants to die. He hooked an ankle around hers to keep her from kicking him again and they were off again, flinging insults at one another like a pair of children. Any tension that might have existed between them evaporated in an instant, and for all her own sorrows, Neph found herself hiding a smile behind the palm of her hand. Curious pair, aren't they? The warrior craned her neck back, alarmed to find Rennala of all people standing beside her. "My lady, I didn't hear you approach." "Of course not, child. I didn't wish to be heard." The queen of the full moon baffled her. They said she was mad, insane, crazed. She didn't look mad. If anything, the air of Liurnia seemed to do her a well of good. She'd since abandoned her crown ridiculous-looking thing to let her hair flow free. Here and now, in the light of the rising moon, she looked every bit a mortal woman. Terribly tall and powerful enough to pick Gideon apart, but mortal nonetheless. She felt another pang of loss at that. She didn't want to think of his words of his death, but it was still so fresh. Melina has her mother's blood and temper. Neph turned her gaze back in time to see their squabble come to an ignominious end. Melina lay planted into the ground. Naruto was sitting on her back, legs crossed beneath him, a look of utter satisfaction stretched across his whiskered face. Judging by her struggles, she wouldn't be extricating herself anytime soon. Her mother, indeed. The queen hid a mysterious smile behind her hand. If I didn't know better, I'd say I was looking at her, here and now. Curiosity reared its head in Nephili's heart. Who is she? 'Tis not my tale to tell. Those piercing eyes sought hers, and she stiffened. I did, however, know your father. Your blood father. The word sent a shiver shooting down her spine. It was only in passing, but I believe I had the measure of him. The boy speaks the truth. Great Godfrey, or Horalu as you know him, would not have given you away unless there was no other choice. A hand came down on her head, mussing her hair as a mother might a sullen child. Know that for certain. Heat flooded her face. How do you know? Godfrey was an honorable man, even as Marika's consort. Gentle fingers nudged her scalp and for a moment she felt very small indeed. Perhaps he did not wish to see you stripped of grace as he and his tarnished army were. Perhaps he sought to spare you. Who can say nevertheless, thou art the child of the first Elden Lord, no matter what some might say. Hold that knowledge with pride. Do you? Neph swallowed once, choking down a sudden surge of emotion. Do you know where he is now? Somewhere in the Badlands, no doubt. I expect he will return soon. Confusion had Neph cocking her head. Why, grace calls to us all, child. I suspect the queen is calling to him even now. Now, go. She nudged her back. You've dallied long enough. Go speak with the boy if you wish. Heat seared through her face. I said no such thing. Rennala tutted, ageless in her bemusement. Children these days, if you want him, then take him for yourself. Or don't. You aren't the only one after him. Her gaze traveled back to Emlicent and Latenna, the later already stuffing Gideon's head in a sealed bag for safekeeping while the former helped Bok strip the last of the cloth from his armor. They will make their moves if you do not. Her throat closed. And you? Undecided. Came the answering hum. I shall make my decision after Rykard is dealt with. Now, cease then stalling and move. Neph sputtered and tried to dig her heels in. The queen wasn't having it. Another nudge spurred her forward against her will, forcing her to walk or trip outright. On faltering feet, she approached Naruto and Melina. Still trapped under Naruto, the latter saw her first and her pale face went red with shame. We shall speak of this later. She vanished into motes of blue light with those words. Run all you like. Naruto shook a fist after her fading form. This isn't over. Neph coughed into a fist, drawing his gaze. He looked back her way with a chagrined smile. How much of that did you see? Enough. She nudged his shoulder with her own. You were quite vocal earlier. He scratched at his cheek with one finger and looked away. Kind have to be that way with Melina. She'd throw herself on a spike if it meant saving the world. And you? Neph blinked. How are you doing? He granted her a rueful grin. You look about as exhausted as I feel. She'd almost forgotten about Gideon. The thought shamed her soul. Her entire body felt heavy, both in shoulders and spirit. In all her years, she'd never thought it would come to this. Perhaps that made her foolish, naive. Gideon had been her foster father, raised her, for lack of a better word. She had looked to him for understanding, wisdom, guidance. At the end, she'd thought he might be able to explain himself, to say something, anything, justify his horrific misdeeds, reason it all away. But no, there had been no justifications. Only pain, misery, and the bitter, bitter realization of her own foolishness. Gideon had never loved her. She'd been naught but a tool to him, a weapon, nothing more. And now he was gone. Had it all been for nothing in the end? She would not weep. She would not wail. She was a warrior. She was. A hand settled upon her bare shoulder. Need a minute. Yes. Anger sparked. Shame at admitting her weakness as much as being seen in such a state. She tore herself from his grasp, walked a few paces, and plonked herself down. She didn't trust the ground and so glared at the starry sky above. Do not look upon me. I would not have you see my tears. Ain't nothing to be ashamed of. He sat beside her, swinging himself down onto a nearby tree stump. People cry all the time. Even so, she looked away from him. I shall return to the hold. I need some time to think. At least let Bach go with you. He's good at cheering folks up. I think I shall do that. Silence stretched between them. She didn't dare break it. I get it. Naruto's head bobbed in understanding. Gideon raised you, even if he wasn't your blood. You can't forget something like that. Believe me, I understand. Her gaze swung back his way. You've lost someone too, haven't you? Several someones. He scooted a little closer, surprised her now, by laying his head on her shoulder. I could fill a book with all the names I've lost, the friends I've buried, the funerals I've seen. A rueful chuckle tumbled past his lips. There have been so many. I know it hurts. He reached a hand up and past her, as though to grasp at the very stars themselves. Pain is a part of life, but it's what you do with that pain that defines you. And what did you do with yours? I embraced it. He looked her square in the eye. I decided to live on in their memory. You can cry if you want to. Go ahead, let it out. I won't say a word. A single tear rolled down her cheek. It was the prelude to the flood and she lost all control. She turned and slotted against him. Naruto was true to his word. He didn't push her away. An armored arm looped loosely round her shoulders in a half hug. That tore it. Despite her best efforts, a sob tore out of her. It was an ugly, wretched sound. She buried her head in his chest, trying to staunch her tears. She failed. Naruto held her while she wailed. There you go, let it all out. Raya found herself in a bit of pickle. She must get her necklace back. She simply must. She couldn't return to the manor without it. Well, she could, technically speaking, but such would be an arduous journey, and the teleportation afforded her by Mother's trinket was far more expedient. Lady Tanith would understand, of course, even if she would be disappointed. She couldn't bear the thought, but there was nothing that could be done. She'd already tried to retrieve the necklace, and failed miserably for it. Just thinking of her failure made her flinch. Oh, the shame of it all, to lose her most treasured possession to that brute, and all for a bit of prawn. He'd tricked her, deceived her. How was she to know it was meant to be a trade? He'd never said such. She'd begged and pleaded with that blackguard, but alas, her cries had fallen on deaf ears. In the end, the heartless fiend had shouted and chased her away until she'd run here, to this tiny tower in the lake. She dare not leave it. The lakes were not safe. She could hear things out there, awful monsters that would happily grind her bones. She spied some movement out beyond the trees and ducked down behind the stones. Hopefully it wasn't more of those terrible Albanurics with their clubs. She'd barely gotten away from the last bunch. Why must all the creatures here be so wretchedly hostile? Even those awful crustaceans wanted a piece of her. Really, what was a scout to do? She wasn't a fighter. Did she dare wait for night and ambush the braggart? Then such might be possible. She knew he had the necklace on his person. If she could but snatch it from him and bolt, she might be able to get away. Or she might die, pummeled to a pulp beneath those awful metal gauntlets of his. Her knees quivered at the thought. Look, I keep telling you, a man's voice came across the water, breaking through her maudlin musings. We need to find Greyroll first. Raya perked up. Her fist instinct was to hide. Curiosity suppressed it. She peeked out from cover, peering into the morning mists. Be that as it may, a woman's voice intoned, we know not where she went. She has the Melina and Agheel with her, my lord. A third voice joined the second. She will be fine. Fine. I guess she'll be fine on her own a little while longer. Raya could resist no longer. This group didn't sound hostile, and she was in dire need of aid. She dared to lean out yet further. As though waiting for that very moment, the mists peeled away and revealed her quarry. They were not beasts as she feared. On the contrary, they were a rather eclectic band all things considered, a woman riding a wolf, a one-armed redhead, a tall lady in deep blue robes Ando. Oh my. That tall fellow there leading them, the one wearing drake scale armor. She saw something etched into on his chest, arm and neck. Closer inspection confirmed her suspicions. Those were 3 great runes, each one shining like the sun. Gods above. 3 Mother had never told her of a tarnish like this. Surely the manor would have known of such. She took him in at a glance, those bright blue eyes, tawny blonde hair, whiskered cheeks dimpling in a smile as he conversed with his companions. Strength poured from in waves. She could sense it, taste it on her tongue. This one would be a worthy champion indeed, if she could convince him to join the manor. But how to go about it? She'd just had the most wonderful idea. What was the saying Mother always used? Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Yes, that was it. While nothing ventured, nothing gained. Hello. She cupped both hands before her face and called out, "Either might I have a moment of your time?" The party paused. Its leader turned to approach her, ascending the steps at a clip. He looked at her. Really looked at her. Saw right through her, somehow. A faint quirk of his lips set her heart quickening. And yet he said nothing. Silence stretched between them. "It's rather chilly here, isn't it?" Raya piped up at the last, hoping to break the ice between them. "I'm sorry, I'm rambling, aren't I? My mistress sent me off on an errand, but I was accosted by a ruffian and now I'm in a bit of a bind." Her palm itched anew and she wrung them together, stifling the urge to scratch them. "Could I ask you to lend a hand? Perhaps the thug made off with a precious necklace of mine. I need someone to retrieve it. Only," she gulped a little, worrying at the sudden sharpness in his eyes. "Well, he too is a tarnished," she mumbled out. "If you've any qualms confronting your own, I shall find another. I'll take care of it." Even his voice was soothing, most pleasant to the ear. "Oh, thank you dearly." She couldn't keep the words from rushing out. "What a blessing that we've met like this." Eager to make herself useful, she stepped past him and cast a finger in the direction she'd come. "That thug should be resting at an abandoned home down the way. Please, I must have the necklace back. It means the world to me." "Sure." The blonde seemed happy enough to grant her such. "Rennala, you mind watching her for a sec?" The tall woman nodded once. "Not at all." Rennala, the lady Rennala? No, surely not. Perhaps it was someone who shared her name and appearance and manner of speech. Oh dear, she really did feel quite small in her presence. Raya reined in her emotions with an effort. She mustn't transform here. To do so would surely see her slain. "Come, must be Clam. Don't panic." Off the Tarnished went without a word, and his 2 companions with him. That left the tall woman eyeing her most strangely. "Have I offended you in some manner, lady?" "No," the woman hummed after a thoughtful moment's pause. "You simply remind me of someone." Curious. A minute passed in silence. Then another. Yet another still. Raya had just begun to lose hope when she heard it, a muffled explosion, followed by the faint sound of gibbering. Had they found the lout so quickly? Odd. It almost sounded as if he were apologizing. Begging for his life, even. Surely she imagined such a thing. He certainly hadn't said as much to her, and so she waited still. Another minute elapsed. Finally, she heard the footsteps. She wasn't surprised to see him again. Any Tarnished who held 3 great runes was surely no pushover. "Sorry to keep you waiting." The Tarnished and his silent companion sauntered back, looking no worse for the wear. It was a bit of a misunderstanding. "He won't do it again." "Did you kill him?" "No." A hand waved, thumped him upside the head once or twice. "He's learned his lesson." And he reached into his pouch, removing a familiar bauble. He coughed this up. Yes, Raya felt heart sore at the glimmer of gold, such that she nearly hissed with glee. "That is indeed my necklace, thank you kindly. Would you mind?" "Not at all." She turned her back to him, not once doubting his intent. He stepped to her silently. Nimble fingers danced across her collarbone as fiddled with the clasp of her necklace, reaching down and around, the better to fasten it to her neck. This close, he smelled of fire and blood, smoke and sunshine mingling with a sickly sweet scent she couldn't quite identify. Like overripe fruit on the verge of rotting. Such a curious contrast. It made her want to nuzzle him and wait. What was he doing now? He'd fixed his necklace, but now fingers were stroking her scalp, idly tousling her hair for reasons she couldn't quite comprehend. It felt nice, no focus. Raya straightened with a squeak, heat flashing through her pale face. "Why are you patting my head?" The blonde paused, blinked. "You know, I'm no sure really. Just couldn't help myself. I didn't say stop." He coughed a laugh into his fist. She did the same, desperate to hide her embarrassment. Nevertheless, I am in your debt." His smile set her heart aflutter. "How very strange." "It's no problem, miss." Goodness gracious, she hadn't even given him her name. "Did I forget to introduce myself? I am Raya." She sketched a quick curtsy, cursing herself for the slip. "In the service of Lady Tanith, of the Volcano Manor." Nor did she miss the bemused looks his party exchanged among themselves. "I seek stalwart Tarnished who might join our house." "Yeah, you are very brave yourself." Much more than that, she wanted to say, but such wouldn't be proper. "Not only a steady hand, but a steady heart, merciless even to your own kind." His lips quirked. "I wouldn't call myself merciless." "Even so, please, take this invitation." She pressed a letter into his grasp. "You should seek the Altus Plateau, the realm of the Erd Tree." He waved her on, and she was eager to regale him further. "Do so, and the Volcano Manor will fully extend its invitation. To fight, amongst a family of champions. I have faith in you. Or you could take us there now." His words cut through her thoughts. "Two couldn't." She looked away. It wouldn't be proper. Well, don't you owe me, I mean, I got your necklace back. His smile disarmed her at the last. What was the harm? He seemed a kind sort. And she did rather enjoy those head pats. Thee very well. Let my hand rest upon you for but a moment. He gave his hand gladly. Why, but his fingers were warm. It was like holding the sun in the palm of her hand. Tanith saw the light. Excellent. Zorias had returned from her scouting mission. Much to her surprise, she'd brought champions. Plural. More than one. She spied a man in drake-scale armor wearing 3 great runes. My, someone had been a busy boy, another with lovely red hair, and a third sitting astride a great whirl. This Tarnished and his companions she knew not, but that was a very large woman behind him. She sat a little straighter in her seat. No, nay, that couldn't be. It just couldn't. Oh, dear. Hello, dear Tanith. Lady Rennala, Queen of the Full Moon, smiled upon her. That smile was far too sharp for her liking. Might you know where my son is hiding? He's in sore need of a spanking. She tried to speak, but her lord's mother bowled right over her. And do take off that mask, girl. 'Tis unseemly to hide your face in such a manner. A stronger soul would have argued, railed against her demands. But for Tanith there could be only response given. She complied with a whimper. Rykard opened his eyes. Harem, who disturbs my slumber. Strange. He thought he'd heard a scream just now. But his cavern remained silent, filled with naught but corpses. Nonsense. Must have been his imagination again. Back to sleep he went. More fool he. And spanking indeed. I don't think you're ready for the next chapter. And scene. More of Greyroll next time. The others really stole the show. Well, did you like this story? Yes, no, maybe. Speak up, make yourselves heard, your voice matters. Once more, we're sticking with the Embers rule for this story. If folks don't like this, it won't be continued. Meaning that if the story itself ain't popular, poof, gone. Completely. I'm working 2 jobs during the holidays, so I barely have time to write. As such, I cannot afford to write something folks don't enjoy. So by all means, speak up, your voice matters, make yourself heard. As ever, reviews are the fuel that sustain me. Without them I cannot write a single word. Simple as that. So in the immortal words of Atlas, review, wouldst thou kindly, and have some previews. Some are quite off, but still. Shall I turn your runes to strength? Damn it, I like that armor. Ranni stilled. She heard noise outside her rise. No, nay, surely not. She was imagining things. You speak to me of mercy. Off with the mask. I won't speak to someone who hides themselves behind a facade. Much to his surprise, Tanith complied. How could someone so beautiful have such a twisted heart? Why are you here? He's going to help her kill Rykard. Don't try to stop him. When you say kill, Radon was to be pitied. That monster will not be. Rennala raised her scepter at the serpent. Rykard, I would have words with thee, show thyself at once. The serpent stirred. Who speaks to me so? Thy mother. Finally done hiding, are you? Melina was silent for a long moment. Then she sat beside him. Her head came to rest against his bloody shoulder. As he looked on, her good eye closed. I wish to tell you a story. Greyroll seemed strangest of all. How strange it is to find someone taller than me. I feel almost petite without using my power. Right. He'd seen her grow against Radon, hadn't he? Wait, why isn't she getting angry? Dragons truly were difficult to understand. Still, she'd integrated into their party relatively quickly. Glintstone Dragon Smaragd was not happy to see them. Greyroll thumbed her chin. I do not understand. This one has ever been a good child. He's got crystals growing out his skull if you think for 1 second she's sane after that. She, actually. Hey, I thought that thing was a boy. So do most. Mother, see, I'm starting to realize something. She was right. Maybe I am broken. His victim gurgled at his feet. But I do not care. He stabbed down. And who are you? The proud serpent said, that I must bow so low. Only a fox with a golden cloak, that's all the truth I know. In a coat of gold or a coat of red, I still have my claws. And mine are long and sharp, me lord. As long and sharp as your fangs. Together, mothers were terrifying. Such a phrase embodied Rennala perfectly in this moment, Naruto found, as he watched her tear into Tanith. It also brought another to mind. Never piss off a mother. He knew that one to be a fundamental truth, one he'd both learned the hard way and seen firsthand. When he'd finally met his own mother some years ago, he'd come to understand that there were certain lines you just didn't cross. Kushina was awesome and all, but he'd some come to dread the idea of ever making her angry. Nope. Nuha, don't do it. In conclusion, he'd learned 3 things. Moms were scary. Don't mess with a scary mother. Never come between a mother and her child. In a matter of minutes, Rennala had browbeaten Tanith into both removing her mask and divulging Rykard's location. That she hadn't reduced the poor woman to a whimpering wreck at their feet was honestly something of a miracle, and one he'd chalked up to chance. If it weren't for Raya, he suspected she might have killed the lady of the manor outright. Who, as luck would have it, turned out to be was Rennala's granddaughter. Small world. Again, he couldn't much blame her for that. In the end, it wasn't his concern. Even now he could feel Tanith glaring bloody daggers at him. How someone so beautiful could have such a twisted heart was beyond him. How could you serve Rykard, knowing what he did, what he was? Maybe she had her own reasons. Everyone did. It shouldn't bother him, but it did. It really, truly, did. Naruto pivoted away from the door to look at her. All right, I'll bite. What's eating you? Much to his surprise, Tanith complied. Neat. Why are you here? Thought that was obvious. He's going to help Lady Rennala, say Rykard. Millicent's voice called down from the main hall. He flicked her a quick glance. She looked a little weary from dispatching the sentries outside, but otherwise no worse for the wear, and Latenna was still with her. Good. Their party remained intact. Don't try to stop him. It won't end well for you. Tanith blanched, looping a strand of dark hair around her finger as she fussed over the words. When you say kill, Radon was to be pitied. Latenna clicked her tongue in mild admonishment. That monster will not be. We shall see. Rennala swept out from an adjacent room, smoothing down her robes. His fate remains to be seen. Death, Kurama chimed. It's going to be death. Nothing else will do. Naruto noticed the absence of their guide straight away. Where's Raya? I spelled the girl to sleep. For once, her smile seemed less strained. Realizing Raya was kin seemed to have done wonders for her mood. She need not be awake for this. His spirits sank. So they were really doing this, then. No, Tanith must have realized it too, because she all but flung herself at him. You mustn't, he is our lord, I won't let you take him. Naruto caught her by the wrists and firmly wrestled the inconsolable woman back into her chair. Behind her, the Crucible Knight stiffened, but made no move to intervene. Just as well too, he was ready to turn them inside out if they lifted their sword now. It didn't stop Tanith from flailing at him, wailing, weeping, cursing his very name, and he began to wonder if he would have to put her down for good. In the end, there was no need for either. Rennala flicked her scepter in Tanith's direction. Sleep. The weary woman slumped with a woeful whimper, and after a moment, her Crucible Knight suffered the same. Even in slumber the silent sentinel remained standing. He couldn't fathom the kind of dedication that took. If it weren't for its helm bobbing, he would have thought the creature unaffected. He stepped up and gave its breastplate poke. No response. Right, that settles it. That spell is overpowered. Indeed, the mistress of magic hummed. Alas, it only works on humanoids, half of which have proven their enemies. Still pretty damn useful. She preened. You have my thanks. Shall we go, then? All right. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose and heaved a sigh. Now came the hard part. Millicent, Latenna. Each perked up when he called their name, which made this all the more difficult for him. I need both of you to stay here and keep an eye on the matter. Millicent gave him a fearsome pout. Bless her sweet, simple soul. My place is by your side, my lord. Latenna folded both arms before her chest. I concur, you shouldn't face such a beast alone. I won't be alone, he countered. Rennala's coming with me. Millicent looked to her, golden eyes narrow. Why? The queen favored her with a small, sad smile. Because, dear girl, Rykard is my son. Understanding dawned in her gaze. Pity soon accompanied it. You have my condolences. Latenna still looked fit to argue the point. Eventually, she wilted under his stare. I'll allow it this once. There will not be a second time. Proud little thing she was, unable to say how she really felt. In truth, he couldn't blame them their protest, but he had good reason for this. He'd already killed Radon, and truth be told, he didn't much like the idea of killing another soul who could be saved. Millicent had nearly died against Radon. He wasn't about to risk her against something far worse. Latenna was skilled, make no mistake, but her arrows would be of no help against what they were to face. Better they stay here, where it was safe, and prevent any stray recusants from flanking them. Those, they could handle. Rykard was another matter. He couldn't bear the thought of them coming to harm. Naruto patted her shoulder. Thank you. Ranni opened her good eye with a lingering frown. Strange. She'd experienced the most curious dream. She had dreamed of Mother. Tiwa's nothing, surely, wasn't it? Naruto followed Rennala down. Down they went, through the manor, through the prison town and all its horrors, through all the blasphemy that followed, into darkened shadows rife with corruption, abominations, and broken souls beyond any hope of redemption. None were spared. They were, all of them, put to the word. In truth, the fights that followed were a blur, for he didn't wish to recall the wretched creatures he fought nor the ghastly abomination and beasts that took pride in their power. Manserpents, crazed Albanurics, even the odd Omen killer and feral dog. All were slaughtered. Rennala acquitted herself well throughout the chaos. He hadn't had a chance to see her fight before. What she'd done to Gideon had been an execution, not proper battle. But this was poetry in motion. Fluid grace personified. She was no god, or even a demigod at that, yet she had power all the same. Her spells knew no mercy, her summons even less so. Like watching a well-trained dancer sway atop her stage, so did he find himself amazed. More than once he caught her smiling as her sorceries scythed down serpents, heard her bell-like laugh as swatted aside twisted wretches who crossed their path. Yet in the same vein she proved her mercy, gently putting maddened Albanurics out their misery. Of course, that wasn't to say he let her do all the fighting. When they encountered a magma worm, he annihilated it with a Raisin Shuriken. Likewise, Kurama's jaws made short work of the godskin noble they encountered in the temple of Agheel. It was merely a matter of luring the massive oaf outside and think-crunch. Honestly, nothing put up much of a fight. It gave him time to think. Millicent and Latenna weren't happy at being left behind with Raya, but he knew they'd understand in time. Someone was needed to keep Bernal and the rest from fleeing, for the ranks of the recusants would surely break once Rykard was dealt with. They couldn't have killers like that out and about in the world. Rykard was their sin to bear. This was something he and Rennala needed to do, alone. It was better this way. Had to be the two of them, someone else might have gotten it wrong. And then they found him. It wasn't a sudden thing by any means. The ground sloped suddenly past a lava flow and they followed it. Soon enough their path branched off into a cavern, and past that, massive chamber filled with calcified bodies. Poor souls froze in their final moments of horror. Their faces told him all he needed to know. They'd arrived. One such being clutched a massive spear in hand. Naruto snatched it up without thinking. Not a bad tool. Still has some power in it. He saw the beast before Rennala did. A tangled mass of scales lurked in the center of the chamber, writhing over an ugly pool of magma. A grisly heartbeat thumped in his ears, a steady thud that threatened to swallow the very world. Just being near it threatened to deafen him. Still no sign of Rykard, though. He could sense something nearby, a vague, oily presence, slipping through his grasp when he tried to focus, but where? Rennala's breath hitched in her throat. It brought him back to himself, and he turned to find her stepping back, one hand over her mouth. I thought I was ready, the words tumbled from her lips, but this size is beyond what I imagined. He couldn't blame her. This Placino, that didn't do this den of depravity justice. This place was a grave, a tomb for countless dead, many lured to their death in the name of greatness. Some might have come of their own accord, seeking an audience. The knowledge did little to diminish his disgust. They'd died all the same. Rennala wasn't moving. The onus of choice fell upon him. What do you want to do? This. Rennala steeled herself, raised her scepter at the serpent and her voice with it. Rykard, I would have words with thee, show thyself at once. A chance came over the creature. Tiny, minuscule at first, so small he didn't even notice it, not right away. The beast dragged his head back, scales scraping across the hardened floor. Slowly, almost ponderously, he rose to regard them. He tensed, anticipating an attack, some suicidal lunge. It never happened. The serpent continued to rise and rise and rise. Hideous limbs burst from its body at jarring angles. Arms, legs, too many. His gorge rose as the chamber began to tremble. He's coming. What are you talking about? Naruto had his answer a heartbeat later. As he looked on aghast, the beast turned its head round to regard them, revealing something near what passed for the back of its skull. Were those scales? No, scales didn't look like that. A bruise of some sort, whatever it was, the ghastly thing was moving. Opening their eyes. Not a bruise. Not at all. It took him a long moment to realize who he was looking at, but once he did, he immediately wished he hadn't. Rennala's words came to mind. He fed himself to the serpent. The face twitched, as though waking from a long slumber. Very well. A twisted limb stretched from the snake's skin and thrust itself into the serpent's gaping maw. Pale fingers found the hilt of a longsword, once golden, now covered in rusted blood, and tugged it free. He could see the wriggling tendrils etched upon it, those countless, innumerable dead falling into the magma below. Much to his chagrin, the viper pivoted to gaze upon them. The serpent stirred. Who SSSS speaks to me so? Rennala stepped forth. Thy mother. All went still. ISSC. Rykard hissed a low laugh, shattering the silence. It is good of you to come to me. Now join the SS Serpent King, his family, his very voice promised death. Together, we SS shall devour very gods. Rennala looked upon him, mute with horror. What have you become? They got a reaction. The abomination hissed down at her. I am what you made me. The words burst out of the carrying queen in a bitter laugh. No. She shook her head, setting her dark hair swaying. No. I had no part in this. You fed yourself to that thing. And where else was I to turn? Mother, his words were pure poison, hissing out every second syllable. Godwin lay dead. Radon, rotten by Melina, who fled to parts unknown with her dearest Miquella. Father is gone, and his whore of a queen with him. I will break the cycle. And Yahoo, he leaned forward to leer at her, massive face mere inches from her own. You are no better than Ranni, a wretched SSS shadow of a SSS sister, come to claim what is rightfully mine. I won't allow it. Rennala made an anguished noise. Naruto felt his right ear twitch despite it. Ranni. Hadn't he heard that name before? It had been a while, but near the beginning of his journey. Hadn't there been a meddling witch who offered him a bell? She'd identified herself as Renna at first, before he wheedled her real name out of her, then fled shortly thereafter. Could it be the Ranni he'd met, and the one Rykard spoke of? Could they be one and the same? Rennala snapped something at Rykard. He caught the tail end of it, little more. Speak ill of the dead. Dead, another raspy chuckle. Yes, what do you think? No. Oh, yes. That hideous visage twisted in a dark rictus of a grin. She lives. A SSSS shadow of her former SSS self, lurking in the old manor, hiding from the two fingers. You lie. Naruto raised a tentative hand. Actually, he doesn't. Rennala rounded on him with wide eyes. Explain yourself at once. Well, I met someone named Ranni a while back. He scratched the back of his head beneath her fierce scowl. Granted, she called herself Renna before I managed to ferret out her real name, Butea. Her body seemed kinda weird, all empty and hollow, like she wasn't even there. Just a spirit clinging onto life. Rykard made a pleased nose. SSC, even your SS servant betrays you. Enough. Clenched knuckles slammed into his chin, cutting him short. Naruto stalked after him. His arms betrayed him, casting aside the serpent slayer to reach over his shoulders for Radon's twin greatswords. The general's great rune burned in his shoulder. Such a strange feeling. Did he take wicked pleasure in shutting Rykard up? Possibly. Did he enjoy watching that sadistic serpent fly across the chamber? Most certainly. Was he going to do it again? Undoubtedly. Rykard coiled upright and rounded on him with a sibilant hiss. And what is this? Then you dare defy a god? Naruto opened his mouth to reply, closed it now as a firm hand settled on his shoulder. He jolted, startled to find Radon's specter standing beside him, face carved from stone. He glared at it. The rune wraith glared back at him. Guilt and regret reared their ugly heads in his heart. No, not now had he come to torment him once more. The wraith spoke, lips moving slowly. As ever, no sound emerged for him to hear. Indeed, he couldn't hear a word he said, but at this close proximity, he found he could read them all the same. 6 little words, a simple series of syllables, no more. They shook him to his core. Finish him, please. Use my blades. Understanding broke like the dawn, burning away his dread. Naruto clapped a hand to his own face. Laughter echoed in the cavern. Art thou broken? Rennala looked at him, aghast, fearing the worst. Hast thou gone mad? Maybe I have. He wiped a mirthful tear from the corner of his eye. It's almost funny. I'm thankful, you know. Ricardo, the creature wearing his likeness, made a low noise that might have been anger or confusion. Impossible to tell. Harem. I thought we might be able to save you. He chambered the black blades, taking a step forward. Rickard slithered backward as his smile grew. I wanted to try, you know, after what happened to Radon, to your brother, it seemed the least I could do. But now, the serpent struck with a snarl as he spoke, and his body responded accordingly. For the first time since he'd slain Radon, he felt the man's blades move with him, help him, guiding his body into a high stance he'd never known. It felt good, felt right. He embraced it, let it fill him. A single sweep of his arms parried the fallen god's sword and brought Rickard low. I know what I need to do. Rickard reared back, on the defensive. You wish to fight me? Fight you? Blue eyes misted over with gold. No, I want to kill you. Rickard hoisted his sword high. Even with Radon's power, you cannot best me. Naruto raised the star-scourged greatswords and shouted to the sky. Radon's weapons answered with a mournful dirge of their own, bathing the chamber in baleful violet light. Gravity itself inverted, yanking the Serpent King forward. From there he swept in and swung hard, carving a canyon across rotten scales in a single sweeping cut. Blood bubbled across Rickard's bulk, warping his cry into a roar of rage. You dare! A sphere of purest moonlight smote him in the face to stun him. Bless Rennala and her spells. Wretch Rickard swatted her acid. Naruto saw his opportunity for what it was and waded in. Rickard saw him coming, tried to ward him away with a spindly limb. Too large, too slow. He let the abomination's lunge sweep harmlessly overhead, slashed it off at the elbow, ducked another, and cut into him again. The star-scourged greatswords bit deep. More of Rickard's bulk gave way with a squeal of pain. He kept cutting. That was all he had to do. Mercy meant nothing here, no, less than nothing, because Rickard no longer deserved it. He cut and cut and cut, uncaring of the blood splashing his face, of the magma melting his armor, until finally, the Titan fell at his feet. Even then, he didn't die. It will not perish. Yes, you will. He stomped down on the serpent's face, raising Radon's blades overhead one last time. See, I'm starting to realize something. She was right. Maybe I am broken. Rickard gurgled in wordless pain below him. But I do not care. He stabbed down. People like you need to die. Rickard shuddered. Never. I'm sorry, Rickard. Rennala limped over to them before he could deal the final blow. For all of it. She laid a hand on his ruined visage, her voice wavering at the last. For breaking after your father left. For not being there for you, for Ranni, for Radon. I wish I could take it all back. A mangled eye rolled towards her. Rickard is gone. I am what remains. She closed her eyes. Nevertheless, you were right. Failed you. You did not destroy Rickard. A flicker of sanity stirred in the depths of his eyes. I did. It died a moment later. The same way I will destroy you. Rennala's face closed down. Then my son is truly dead. The beast spat magma in her face. For once in her life Rennala was hair too slow. But she didn't falter. She cried out and powered through. Even as he burned her, she swept in, twirled her weapon. Her staff scythed up and stabbed down, slamming into his skull. The glintstone bit deep into an already open wound. Blue light built behind his eyes, glimmered in his skin. Panic mounted within. The creature tried to plead. Mother, wait, no, please. Rennala snarled a sorcery, drowning his words out. Moonlight shone through Rickard's ruined body, penetrating his every orifice in an instant. He burst, not into blood, but runes, the sheer magnitude of which struck each of him and Rennala like a wave, forcing them to their knees. Yet there among them, gleaming brighter than the rest. Gotcha. Naruto grabbed Rickard's greater rune and slammed it into his left shoulder without hesitation. It seared itself into his flesh, glowing a cherry amber to match Radon's on the right. Power coursed through him, vibrating his very veins with vicious vitality. He shuddered against it, taking a moment to center himself as pain spiked through his chest. And a voice trickled in his ear. Fool, no one will hold me captive. Sure enough, Rickard snarled at him, defiant to the last. He'd anticipated such. SSS burnt never dece. SSS shall grow anew in your body and SSS swallow the world. Blue eyes rolled. No, you won't. You cannot stop me. Kurama. On it. Golden chakra burned through his veins and clamped down on the malignant tumor before it could truly root in him. What remained of Rickard's consciousness burned away with a sibilant shriek. His pleas withered away to whispers, and then, not even those. Only his power remained. Fuel for the furnace. Still the pain lingered, causing his muscles to spasm. 4 great runes now. How many were left? Enough. We can handle it. Bleck, he tasted foul. Naruto looked back to Rennala and found her where he'd left her, sprawled down on her knees. She didn't budge. One hand idly stroked her burned face. He could see scorched muscle and a hint of bone. His body howled at him when he tried to move, but he managed to rise on faltering legs and limped her way. Wasn't fair to leave her like that. Not after what she'd been through. He saw it and winced. No, she batted his hands away. Let me be. What are you on about? Hold still and let me heal you. I deserve this. Rennala rounded on him, good eye watering. Look upon me, a mother who slays her own son. She laughed bitterly at Rykard's still resolving remains. Let the world see me for the monster I am. Indignation sparked in him. Screw that, I've had enough of people refusing to be healed. He cupped her face in his hands again, firmly this time, wincing only a little when she hissed in pain. She'd lost an eye, too. Easy fix, that. Ignoring the tremor still racking his body, he closed his eyes, mustered up his chakra and gave it a nudge, directing it into her ruined face. Remarkably, Rennala allowed it. He knew she could have broken his arms in 3 different places, skewered him with spells, yet she let him all the same. It spoke volumes of her trust in him. He didn't see her face heal, but he heard her little gasps all the same. A minute passed, another still. Without warning, he felt Rennala shift against him, dragging his hands down. Thank you, she said at last. Open your eyes, please. Naruto let go and dared to do just that. Against his better judgment he looked down. He had to, just to confirm his suspicions. Sure enough, Rennala lay in his lap, fully healed, head resting between his legs. His own nearly went scarlet. No, calm down. This was perfectly natural. She was just resting. Yeah, that was it. Nothing untoward here. Nothing at all. A lone hand rose to cup one of his cheeks, stroking his whiskers with one thumb. Thank you, she spoke softly, her words a naked whisper. Thou art a true companion. I am unworthy of your loyalty. Allow me to repay you in some small measure. She raised her head from his lap and tugged his face down to hers with intent. Soft, that was his first thought, strange as it might sound. Rennala's lips were soft, sweet, and infinitely yielding to him. Even now she tilted her head to get a better angle, when he found himself returning as he warmed to her, leaning into her arms. How could he not? She was a beautiful woman and they'd just been through hell and back together. More than that, his blood was up. He couldn't stop himself if he wanted to. She made a pleased sound and looped both arms round his neck, dragging him out from under her and down, all but pulling him atop her in her haste to get at him. He felt the hard ground poke at his skin through the tears in his armor, but it was a faint, distant concern, because now she was deepening the kiss, pulling him closer, her tongue tangling with his. Code red to battle stations, all hands on deck. He could feel her body beneath her robes, softer than soft, her curves warm beneath her fingers. It was all he could do not to tear her clothes away. His armor proved an unexpected boon in that regard. When it became clear that Rennala wouldn't be able to remove the melted metal in its current state, she drew away with a reluctant sigh. There, she lay back down and nuzzled into his side. Have I made my intentions clear? He managed a numb nod. Pretty sure you did. Good. Our accord is complete, but I'm afraid I must ask thee a boon once more. Her face darkened even as she spoke, one hand idly tracing his CHSD. Ranni, if my daughter yet lives as you and Rykard claim. She does, he put in quickly, dashing her fears. Don't doubt that. Then I must speak with her. Rennala tried to rise, grimaced when her legs failed her. Take her to task for what she's done. Was she who wrought all this. I would have answers. Easier said than done, that. She might well flee if she knew they were coming. He chose not to say such. She'd suffered enough. Naruto quirked a brow at her. And if you don't like them, Rennala frowned. Then I shall punish her. Io. She tried to stand again. Faltered. Might I lie here a while? Naruto patted her head, running his fingers through her dark hair. As long as you need. Her frown faded into a smile as she nestled into his side. I just might take thee up on that. He'd eaten Rykard. Such should not be possible, yet Tanith knew it to be true. She woke from the sleeping spell and saw him coming up the stairs and knew the truth. Rykard had been consumed. Of that, there could be no doubt. Even now she could feel his power listing within him. The man who had plucked her from her wretched homeland and given her a place at his side was no more. Her mind threaded into fractures, threatening to shatter at the slightest provocation. Gone. Just gone. Her knight wasn't nearly so hesitant. The stalwart warrior took one look at the Tarnished, saw the new great rune he bore in his shoulder and attacked. His speed was great, his strength greater. He was upon the blonde in an instant. There was no time to move, nay, to even react. Clang. Tanith didn't see the blow that felled him, but she heard it all the same. Saw the poor warrior crushed against the wall. The Tarnished lowered his fist. Stay there if you know what's good for you. Her mind raced. She could not die here. She wished to live. But this Naruto had consumed her lord. Wait, if he had done so, if Rykard's power lived in him, then were they not one and the same? Was this not his plan? Had her lord been reborn in him? Her fractured mind pounced on the notion, clinging to it as a child would their mother's skirt. Yes, that must be it. Zoria seemed fond of him. That, she knew, was her only chance. Appeal to his better nature. She must make amends before her daughter woke, and soon. And so she flung herself at his feet, bowed her head until it touched the floor. Please, let me serve you, Nano, Lord Naruto. He looked surprised by the words. Had he not planned this? No. Surely he must have. She barreled on, fearing the stroke of his sword at any moment. Your triumph has opened my eyes. You bear 4 great runes now. Mustn't look him in the eye over long, not until she was finished. None have come so far as thee. I have made many a mistake, but if it is your will, then I shall spend the rest of my life trying to atone for them. Her new lord cast a baffled look to Lady Rennala and received a nod. Take her, then. There has been enough death this day. And besides, she has good childbearing hips. Heat speared down the back of Tanith's neck. It is as she says. Naruto clapped a hand to his face. Ugsage saved me from matchmakers. There had been a small scuffle shortly in their absence. Some of the recusants tried to resist their intrusion, as was their wont. They were put down hard. Isa and Henricus perished under Millicent's blade and Latenna's arrows, and Bernal might well have followed if not for Raya's pleading. The other denizens of the manor had likewise yielded to them without fighting. A curious fellow by the name of Patches surrendered outright. He seemed awfully eager to make himself of use. Something of a vendor, that one. His wares were useful enough. Nor was he the only one to stay out the conflict. Tanith's knight hadn't resisted and been summarily knocked out for its rebellion. Not once. Perhaps the warrior within didn't concern themselves with such squabbles. Maybe it was only loyal to Reichert and had believed they would perish to him. In any case, now she too had been put down. That left one last item on Rennala's agenda, one final task to be meted out. And so they set out to find the last wayward member of her family. Yes, a wayward daughter indeed. Ranni stilled. She heard noise outside her rise. No, surely not. She was imagining things. She wasn't one prone to overreactions, but the years had made her cautious, and besides, she felt she could be forgiven for this. For now that she listened, she realized her rise had gone quiet. It began with a curious stillness. Her dragon roared once, then fell silent. Her wolves snarled at this new threat and promptly descended into a chorus of happy barks and yipping, as if they recognized this intruder. Such commotion had her scrambling off her seat and her stacked books to peer out her window, but she was too late. She saw a flicker of dark robes. No more. She heard the telltale clank of a lever and knew the elevator was rising with it. Her heart sank in the same instant. Blade was away. Eiji was watching the entrance to the manor. Celavis was in his own rise and nowhere near her, which meant, steepling her fingers, she cast a warding spell over the stairwell. She felt the barrier cling onto steel and stone, holding fast. There, now they would be trapped within the spire. Someone tore right through it. How? An ugly pang of panic bleeded through her mind. She was still a demigod in spirit, if not necessarily flesh at the moment. Her sorcery was of the highest caliber, potent beyond measure. No one should be able to shred her spell so. Radon Wasgun. Reichert was still lurking down in his manor, last she checked. Morgott ruled over the capital while Miquella and Melina were far, far to the north. She knew Marika was trapped, and Radagon with her. So who was this, then? Mother? Nay, surely not. She'd gone mad. When did I last check up on her? But there was no time for further thought. Ranni could hear footsteps approaching even now. She raced back to her chair and plonked down upon her covered books, determined to at least appear taller than she was. She called her darkest sorceries to her, ready to fling them at whomever stepped through that door. So be it, then. If her last line of defense had fallen, then she would defend herself. They would not find her lacking. She was Ranni the witch she was. Oh dear, because there was no Tarnished coming through her door. Ranni balked, and her spell slipped from her grasp, rocketing forward. The newcomer raised their staff and her sorcery sizzled out. Mother. It was but a whisper, little more than a startled rasp, but she heard it all the same. Sharp eyes cut to her. Glass still be still, she must be still. Maybe if she remained seated, she would think her a doll. There was another with her now, a man in tattered armor, bearing 4 great runes, one upon his chest, 2 to his shoulders, and another carved into his neck, yet she barely had time to notice these. Why, you ask? Mother was upon her. I know thy voice, she hummed, if not necessarily thy form. Speak. 2 fingers flitted out, pinching her cheek, her voice the lowest of hums. Art thou an impostor? If so, I shall strike thee down. She would, too. In her current state, Ranni, she knew herself no match for her. She tried not to whimper. Really, she did. She failed within 3 seconds. No, 'tis I, mother. Rennala made a strangled sound. Another hand came up, cupping her face with infinite tenderness. How is this possible? She didn't give her the chance to answer. Strong arms hauled her into a warm embrace, holding tight. Ranni didn't move. She absolutely did not dare. Even when Mother began to weep, she didn't dare make a solitary sound. Sentiment and shock warred within her, shredding any semblance of plotting or planning. She could only sit there, stunned, as Mother fussed over her, and pray she wouldn't find reason to be angry at her. Because she, of all people, had every reason. And if she remembered that. All at once Rennala drew back, holding her at arm's length. How are you here, my daughter? You died. I saw your corpse. Ranni's mind fizzled. In a panic, she said the first thing that came to mind. My death was greatly exaggerated. It was the wrong thing to say. I see. Rennala hummed softly, eyes growing half-lidded. Is that so? Is that all you have to say for thy part in this madness? Her grip tightened. For all the sorrow and pain you caused me, and this world. Numbed by shock, Ranni's tongue betrayed her. Yes, fool, she'd all but thrust her foot into her mouth. The blonde behind Mother sighed. You shouldn't have did that. Ranni scowled at him, recognizing the arrogant oath. Did what? Why have you brought mine Mother here? Tarnished speak. Naruto shook his head slowly. Mother blurred. In an instant Ranni found herself yanked forward and draped over her mother's knee. A hand swept forth, parted her robes, arched her back. T was a position she'd not been held in since she was a little girl, a punishment most familiar. Her face darkened in sudden shame. No, surely she wouldn't. Not here, not in front of the Tarnished. She looked up and found Mother's face carved from stone. Thou hast chosen poorly. Ranni balked, her good eye widening. Mama, no. Mama, yes. Whap. Her entire body jolted as an open palm collided with her hindquarters. From a physical standpoint, puppet body could not feel anything. No, nay, not a thing. Her soul was another matter. Mother was a mistress of magic. She knew spells that were unknown even to the gods. T was she who had beat back Radagon himself, forcing him to win by love what an army could not through war. In short, Ranni's spirit felt every blow as if she were flesh. Whap. Stop, she squirmed, to no avail. Cease this at once. Whap. Another hand hit her flank, drawing a yelp from her. Whap. Mother, please. Rennala wound up for another smack. Whap. Ranni whimpered like the child she no longer was. There was only one thing for it. I'm sorry. Well, I said someone was getting spanked, but now who? And scene. Someone was bound to pounce on Naruto sooner or later. Well, did you like this story? Yes, no, maybe. Speak up, make yourselves heard, your voice matters. Once more, we're sticking with the Embers rule for this story. If folks don't like this, it won't be continued. Meaning that if the story itself ain't popular, poof, gone. Completely. I'm working 2 jobs during the holidays, so I barely have time to write. As such, I cannot afford to write something folks don't enjoy. So by all means, speak up, your voice matters, make yourself heard. As ever, reviews are the fuel that sustain me. Without them I cannot write a single word. Simple as that. So in the immortal words of Atlas, review, wouldst thou kindly, and have some previews. Some are quite off, but still. All my hate, Tarnished. You have it. Well, I was just helping your mom out. She called it a boon, or something. Then you shall do me in return as recompense. A blonde brow rose. Ranni wilted under it. I phrased that poorly, didn't I? Yes, you did. Reril tapped her foot. T would seem you have been most busy since I saw thee last. Yup, pretty much. So blunt. We'll rest here. A faint shimmer behind him told a different story. Finally done hiding, are you? Melina was silent for a long moment. This is not the place of my death. And didn't that just sting? Well, screw that, he wasn't going to let her die, even if it killed him. Then she sat beside him. Her head came to rest against his bloody shoulder. As he looked on, her good eye closed. The enemy you face is no base foe. You will need all the strength you can muster. She offered her hand once more. Shall I turn your runes to strength? He blew out a small, irritated sigh. Do it. His world burst into light, and through it, he heard her voice. I wish to tell you a story. Latenna hid a laugh behind her hand. No, you look wonderful. You're mocking me, aren't you? Godric, I don't want to hear about Godric. Godric is dead. Take your daughter and go to the round table right now, or so help me I will shave you bald. Irina tugged at her father's sleeve. You'd best listen. He sounds rather cross. Cross, Naruto's clone growled, and although Irina couldn't see his face, he sounded every bit of it. He just cleared out an entire castle, and he smells like a fucking fishery while your own men tried to kill me. Mind you, and what the hell am I supposed to do with this big sword? Edgar winced. You could always keep it. A finger jammed his skull so hard it practically sought brain matter. One more word out of you and I'm hitting you with 1,000 years of death. Some base instinct sealed his mouth shut. Irina stifled a small smile into her palm. Her night could be so crass sometimes. Patches raised both hands to ward him off. Nice fox, good fox, please don't eat me. Morgott creaked an eye open. Was he being ignored? Nay, surely not. The Tarnished had to come this way sooner or later. Didn't he? Somewhere in her tomb, Selen sneezed. Oi, got you something. Millicent turned to face him. Paused. Is that an arm? Naruto hefted the prosthetic limb like some bloody trophy. You have no idea what Patches and I went through to get this so much poison. Raya tilted her head. Tilted it some more, now. Blinked at the item in her hands. Is this for me? Sure is. Oh, her eyes watered. No one's ever given me a gift before. All the more reason to master her shapeshifting, then. She wanted to be of use to them, and she was of none in either form. Perhaps if she could find a way to combine the two. You can change if you want to, but you don't have to. It's your choice. In the end, you decide who you are. Nobody can take that from you. Make merry. Naruto liked giving gifts. Raya learned that lesson rather quickly during her time with the Tarnished. Be it small trinkets or grand treasures, he seemed to genuinely delight in doting upon his party. And the manor was rife with loot. With Rennala's grandmother's return, it fell to them to clear out the Carrion Manor proper, rather, to prepare for what was to come. That meant scouring the grounds free of the unpleasant beasts that roosted there, taming the wolves that had gone feral in their lady's absence, and bringing the knights within to heal once more. Though she couldn't assist in such a task, she lacked both a weapon and the proper training. She could watch all the same. His clones did good work, but Naruto himself cut through enemies like a scythe. It was all a bit heady, really. She'd been happy enough to know she had a foster mother of sorts in Lady Tanith. The knowledge had heartened her in darker times, but to discover that she was the daughter of Lord Rykard himself, to know that divine blood coursed in her veins, that she had a grandmother and an aunt, truly she felt blessed beyond measure. She'd considered the Tarnished a champion before for his acts of kindness alone, but now he was all but a lord in her eyes. He'd given her the gift of a proper family. Never had she needed something so badly and never known until she received it. Yes, it was a bit sad to know that her father had been a monster, but still family. Which brought her to the present moment. Raya tilted her head, tilted it some more, now, blinked down at the item in his hands. Is this for me? Naruto's smile was the purest thing she'd ever seen as he offered it up to her. Sure is. Oh, her eyes watered, stinging a little at the realization. No one's ever given me such a gift before. Certainly never one like this. It was a beautiful blade, all things considered. Raya felt unworthy of it. An ancient treasure that hummed with power, a relic of an altogether bygone era, strength to make even the weakest of warriors mighty indeed. It called to her. She ached to hold it and make it hers. Rennala called it the Sword of Night and Flame. Once more, he offered it to her. Found it while we were cleaning up. And you mentioned wanting a weapon, Sue, a surprise. Raya lost control of her emotions and hiccuped a little. I can really have this. Here, I'll make it easy for you. Her merry champion stepped forth and thrust the sheathed weapon into her hands. Hold it like this. When she made to draw away, his hands closed around hers, forcing her to grasp the blade or risk dropping it entirely. See, it's simple. Watch. Hands still over hers, he bid her to draw the blade. Its sheath vanished in a mote of blue dust. Raya could feel the blade's satisfaction. It was pleased with her. Pretty cool, right? Naruto beamed at her, blissfully ignorant of the link she'd just formed. It does that. Even gave it a few test swings. Watch. He pushed in a little closer, body brushing against hers as he guided her into a stance. Hold it like this, give it a thrust, and... Raya felt a tug on her mana reserves, already substantial, and a night comet flashed out, blazing forth in a roaring beam of green and blue. She gasped a little, but Naruto didn't give her time to marvel at it. He was already nudging her into another stance. Hands on hers, he bid her to raise the blade, swing it out on a sweep, and fire this time. Raya couldn't quite conceal her excitement as a flash of orange flame flared in the air. Her back straightened, abandoning its customary hunch. Oh, that's delightful. See, Naruto stepped away, and serpent that she was at heart, Raya found herself missing his warmth almost immediately. It's simple. Even a rookie can do it. He was right. Raya felt she could use this blade. Perhaps even master it. Anxiety crept up on her a moment later. Even so, I don't think I deserve it. Stop that. He booped her nose, drawing a yelp from her. I'm giving you the sword. It's yours. He stressed the last word. Keep it. You really need to be more confident, you know. Her eyes flitted up to his. Confident, you say? A harsh crash rattled the manor and had them both jumping apart. Oi, Naruto rounded on the clones responsible for it, fist raised. Be careful with that wall, you trying to bring this place down. Sorry, boss. For the love off look, his gaze swung back to her. You can keep the sword. Really, it's yours. You deserve it. Now I've got to go wrangle these guys. You good? Raya dared a tentative nod. Great. Let me know if you need anything else. His piece said. She watched him stomp away with a wistful look. He'd already done so much for her. Moreover, he was kind to her. He'd seen her true for and barely batted an eyelash. All the more reason to master her shapeshifting, then. And now, perhaps the art of the blade. She wanted to be of use to him, and she was of none in either form. Perhaps if she could find a way to combine the two. What was the saying, best of both worlds? Yes, she rather liked that idea. Ranni was glaring at him again. She was really going all in on it this time. Naruto could feel her lone eye trying to burn a black hole between his shoulders while he scarfed down his food. Didn't do a thing to him, of course. He'd suffered far worse glares than the ire of some surly witch. Yet still she kept at it, trying to cow him with sheer willpower. He'd give her points for effort if nothing else. She'd been at it for the better part of 2 hours now, and still not a single word on her part. Did she really think she was scary? If so, he pitied her truly. He'd fought with gods and cosmic horrors. By contrast, this was adorable. Don't tease her. Kurama jabbed him. She has a reason to sulk. Naruto considered it. No, he was definitely going to tease her. Just couldn't help himself. With their triumph, an uneasy piece of sorts had fallen over the Carrion manor. He'd taken full advantage. Despite the sound spanking she'd delivered unto her daughter, Rennala was over the moon, pun intended, to know that Ranni still lived, even in a reduced state. She'd offered him a reward. He'd asked for a feast. After the hell they'd been through, the party had gladly accepted. The rest, as they say, was history. It had taken the better part of a day to clear the entire manor of its monsters and deactivated the defenses, but the remaining servants, few in number though they were, remained steadfast towards Rennala. So loyal, in fact, they were all too happy to obey their mistress's command. A small army of shadow clones only helped hasten their efforts. Now, some hours later, the result was a somewhat rustic meal at a round table that could have easily seated 20, but settled for less than half that number. He'd long since lost track of the dishes that the cook swept out. Lamb, pork, chicken, goose, gravy so rich it practically melted in your mouth, to say nothing of the drink. Wine was actually pretty good with steak. Really, really good. Sweet, too. Who knew? Don't tell me you're drunk already. He wasn't sure. Tipsy, maybe. He'd been drinking a bit and felt pleasantly happy. Was this why Tsunade drank all the time? Looking back, he could understand the appeal. Kurama snorted, a sound that came with experience. Keep going and you won't be saying that come morning. Bah, what did he know? Everyone else had certainly taken well to the festivities. He could see a faintly amused Latenna swapping stories with Raya at the end of the table. Tanith lingered away from the lot of them. Melina had driven her into a corner when he wasn't looking. She seemed to be having harsh words with Rykard's former consort. Judging by Tanith's strained expression, it wasn't a pleasant argument. The gentleman in him was almost tempted to sweep in and rescue her. The prankster, however, Tanith could stand to be chewed out. She'd live. By contrast, Rennala had drawn Millicent aside near the entrance. Each had a flagon in hand, and their conversation seemed a lively one, judging by the way the latter was waving her arm about. Her face looked redder than her hair. He had a bit of a bad feeling about that. Still, it was a heartwarming scene, all things considered. Now they just needed to track down Melina and the dragons, then they'd have a grand feast of things. Persistent girl. Ranni was still glaring at him. Silly child. Didn't she knew when to give up? Honestly, it was like having a little sister. Naruto took a great big bite of chicken, guzzled some more wine to wash it down, then finally deigned to grin her way. Did you want something? When she continued to stare, his grin grew. You're mad at me, ain't you? I could see why you'd be angry at your mom and all, but I really didn't do anything. Ranni made an angry noise, but didn't defy him. She wasn't about to sling any spells, not with Rennala present, but she was wary towards him still. He supposed she had that right, given what she'd been through. They depended her life after all. They barely knew one another. Small wonder she gave him the cold shoulder. He wouldn't be surprised if he got the silent treatment for the rest of the night. Dost thou intend to wed my mother? Which was precisely why her question floored him. Naruto's head snapped to the side as he choked on his drink, thumped his chest, and swallowed the rest. Oi, that was good wine you made me waste. 'Tis a simple question, Tarnished. She rolled her shoulders in a shrug. You have a great any runes about you. I thought it pertinent. Pertinent, she said. Nosy which he wasn't asking about her love life. His face flushed. She kinda jumped me first. After you killed my brother. It wasn't a question. Shame hit like a brick. Sorry about that. You needn't be. Still him. In truth, he felt more than a little guilty for all the lives he'd taken. Some, like Gideon, deserved to die, but even so, killing wasn't something he took pride in. He would remember each life he took, no matter how small. He still felt he could have saved Radon. In a perfect world, he might have even found a way to rescue Rykard, thereby bringing him back from what he'd become. This could have been a grand family reunion. Suppose that's a pipe dream, ain't it? That's right. The lands between were far from perfect. He'd have to be content with those lives he'd saved. Across the table, Millicent squawked in response to something Rennala said. The queen laughed. His eyes were drawn to her once more. She really did look good with her hair down. Cease thy staring. Ranni swatted his knee, sensing his mood. From the way mother tells it, you did all you could for my kin. We both know Rykard was a monster, and Radon was beyond help. 'Tis no fault of yours that you slew them. Nice of you to say. Ranni gazed upon him for a long moment, trying to gain the measure of him. At length she sighed. If you truly insist on this nonsense of atonement. The rune on his finger brightened almost imperceptibly. Naruto curled his hand, hiding it from the Snow Witch. I'm all ears. Irina was all ears. Really, Tiwa's all she could be given her blindness. For once, she was almost grateful for her lack of sight. Godric, I don't want to hear about Godric. Godric is dead because you see, her knight was angry. Irina knew it by the agitated tapping of his foot, the bitter bite of his voice as he railed at father. Take your daughter and go to the round table right now, or so help me I will shave you bald. Must you be so uncouth? Why did you punch me? Irina tugged at her father's sleeve, bringing him up short. He'd best listen. He sounds rather cross. Cross, Naruto's clone growled, and although Irina couldn't see his face, he sounded every bit of it. He just cleared out an entire castle, and he smells like a fucking fishery while your own men tried to kill me. Mind you, she imagined those words and the sardonic smile they must have brought. And what the hell am I supposed to do with this big sword? She could feel father winced. You could always keep it. Irina heard a finger jam into his skull so hard it practically sought brain matter. You, be quiet. One more word out of you and I'm hitting you with 1,000 years of death. Some base instinct sealed his mouth shut. Irina stifled a small smile into her palm. Her knight could be so crass sometimes. She hoped, wherever he was, that Original was having a better time of things. You fancy him? Millicent stared studiously into her wine. I haven't the foggiest idea what you mean, my lady. Her reflection gazed back at her, the very picture of innocence. It did not to conceal the treacherous thoughts swirling within her head. Fancy him? Rennala didn't know the half of it. Nevertheless, she mustn't look up. To do so now meant defeat. Rennala was baiting her. She knew it. They both did. Ranni's mother had been at it for the better part of an hour now, though Millicent knew not why. Her assistant didn't even begin to describe her in this moment. No, she didn't need to see Rennala's face to know what the older woman was getting at. Was it my imagination? Then did you not claim to be his babe? I am. Her head snapped up, golden eyes ablaze to meet her gaze. I owe him my life. Mistakes were made. Rennala wore a merry grin. Just as I thought, then. Millicent's courage guttered out, a candle in the wind. She downed her wine to fortify it. No dice. Rennala looked like the cat that caught the canary. Come, the queen of the full moon looped an arm around her shoulders and steered her toward the entrance. Let us speak in private. Gods above, she had a tight grip. In short order, Rennala ushered her to the southern edge of the chamber, well away from prying eyes and ears. Another tankard was forced into her hand to replace the one she'd drained. Millicent glared golden daggers at her, but Ranni's mother had reared 3 demigods. She remained utterly unaffected. Rennala leaned close, her voice a harsh whisper. I've already spoken with the warrior woman, and I shall tell you what I told her. If you wish to claim him, do so before it's too late. There are others that would seek him. Millicent's eyes raked over the table to seek out the others. Latenna kept glancing Naruto's way and riot with her, to say nothing of Tanith. Melina might even have a claim on him, though she'd vanished to parts unknown once more. Even that witch Fia had already embraced her lord twice. Millicent found herself suddenly and intensely grateful that the deathbed companion yet remained confined in the round table hold. Were she now, she might well take advantage of her lord's inebriated state. Millicent watched him. Naruto seemed happy enough as he bantered with Ranni, blissfully unaware of their attention. It let her watch him all the more. Firelight from the hearth splayed across his face as he waved his arms about, dancing across the great runes carved into his body. His time spent in the lands between had not been remiss. She could see the lean, corded muscles bunching beneath his tunic. Her mouth went dry. She was toxic to anyone but him. To be near her overlong guaranteed that their eventual death by rot. But he endured it, kept it suppressed. He alone could be by her side without fear of death. She dared a tentative kiss with him before, but looking upon him now. Blasted matchmaker. And what do you gain from this? A shrug. His happiness. It is the least he deserves. Her brow furrowed. Yet you yourself are trying to win his heart. I am. She made no secret of it. What of it? I've seen the way you and others look at him. I am not so foolish to think I can keep him to myself. Millicent tore her gaze away. Rennala pinched her arm, drawing her back. Tell me, how many more lives will he take before he breaks a dozens, 100,000s? Perhaps the severity of her statement left Millicent simmering. Don't make that face. He's been holding back, restraining himself. You know that as well as I. Such restraint is admirable, but misguided. She tutted softly, turning her gaze back to him. It shan't last much longer. The wheel of fate has begun to move at long last, and whether he knows it or not, he is meant for greatness. Her shoulders stiffened. What do you mean by that? 4 great runes. Rennala ignored her wholeheartedly, still gazing upon Naruto. I expect he shall have 9 before it is done. Will he be able to endure, I wonder, or will he break, as so many others have before him? 9 8 at least, Millicent could account for. She listed the demigods in her mind. But then who was the last? Rennala answered her unspoken question. Little Ranni cast aside her great rune long ago, but she did not destroy it. Doubtless she still knows where it is. He shall need it, by the end. She will be loath to tell him, of course. A merry titter fled from her lips as the two of them watched him flick the girl's forehead. His actions drew a fearsome scowl from the Empyrean. You see, my daughter is the stubborn sort. She may forgive yet, but she will never, ever forget, she sighed softly, laying one hand to her cheek. I suspect she will be the hardest for him to win over if he hasn't gone mad by then. Millicent stilled. The words rung in her head. I won't let him break. No, Rennala grinned like a proud parent. Then what are you going to do about it, little bud? Millicent took a long drink from her flagon. Another now, to fortify herself. Liquid courage in hand, she sallied forth. I am in need of a capable warrior. Naruto arched a blonde brow, but waved Ranni on. You already have Blade. He is missing. Then go find him. I cannot. The cold witch took a moment to steady herself before speaking. He is beyond my sight, and I dare not make the journey alone. Why were they dancing around this thing? Get off your pretty blue arse and start looking. Pretty sure Agheel could lend a hand. Ranni seethed. All my hate, Tarnished. You have it. Why are you still here then, if not to help? Well, I was just doing your mom a favor. She called it a boon, or something. She scowled. Then you shall do me in return as recompense. Another blonde brow rose. T joined the first. Ranni wilted under it. I phrased that poorly, didn't I? Yes, you did. Nevertheless, I am in need of. Why are the two of you sulking over here? Millicent appeared between them, startling them apart. Come make merry. Ranni recoiled, warding one hand over her face. Naruto's gaze zeroed in on Millicent while she did. He noted her flushed cheeks, the wine on her breath, the half-lidded look in her golden eyes. No, surely not. She always seemed so rigid, so composed, so stoic. Harry, are you drunk? Millicent laughed. Nonsense, M-Lord. I'm just fine. Right. She really isn't. Someone's a happy drunk. Mind if I borrow him for a moment here? I'll give you this in exchange. Naruto came back to himself just in time to find Millicent with an arm around him. In the same instant she all but thrust her half-empty tankard into Ranni's lap, forcing the witch to catch it with all 4 hands or risk spilling the brew all over her robes. In the moment it took her to do so, his blade had him up and out of his seat, dragging him away before the winter witch could so much as squawk. Tipsy as he was, Naruto snickered a little at her plight and, baffled by Millicent's brash behavior, let her tug him along, toward a door, then out the hall. He didn't miss the smile Rennala sent his way as they departed. Any idea where you're taking me? To a room. Millicent lisped a little, swaying to the side. Need to talk. Important things. Yup, she was definitely drunk. Millicent brought him to a room all right. Large and expansive and freshly cleaned, it was filled with clutter like much of the manor. This one flowed out into a balcony. He could see the stars without, the full moon peeking its head out behind the clouds like some clever voyeur. Millicent didn't give him time to appreciate the irony. That's not fair. With only that word for warning, she released his arm and pivoted to round on him. Not fair at all. A blonde brow rose. What isn't? You. She stabbed a finger against his chest. Rot flared and sizzled harmlessly upon his skin. I'm your blade. Another poke, another tickle. But you keep trying to protect me. Distance yourself from me. It should be the other way around. Unfair. Naruto tried not to laugh. He really, truly did. He failed. Millicent puffed out her cheeks. What's so funny? Nothing, he amended quickly when it looked like she might actually cry. I just didn't expect to see this side of you. And you're not useless. He laid a hand on her shoulder when it looked like she might argue. Not at all. You could probably whip my ass in a sword fight. She perked up. Truly. Yup, he said. I'm only able to use these big swords thanks to Radon's rune. Beyond that, I'm awful when it comes to swordplay. Her face closed down for a moment, considering, trying to muster her words. Would you be versed to lessons? Not at all. He took his hand from her shoulder, smiling a little. She dared to scoot closer. I'll be in your care. Yeah, you need me, then closer still now. Her lone arm flitted out, grabbing at his hand. I'm useful. Don't talk like that. He let her and ran his thumb over her palm. You're not a tool. She seemed to shiver a little beneath the weight of his words. You matter. Another shiver had her hanging her head for reasons he didn't quite comprehend. Don't ever let yourself think otherwise. All right, you're special to me. Kurama guffawed. You've done it now. Naruto frowned. Done what? The fox only laughed. For you see, Millicent had raised her gaze. Her hand had tightened around his, not painfully, but firm nonetheless, her fingers daring to thread through his. A dark spark of something flashed in her eyes as he looked on. He frowned at it. Was the rot surfacing again? If so, he might need to. Millicent pounced. Her lips struck his as she all but mounted him, driving him back to the bed. She kissed him roughly, as she hadn't before, teeth clicking painfully against his. Something sparked in Naruto's chest. Perhaps it was the wine. Maybe it was the stress. Perhaps he'd simply grown tired of holding back. Regardless, he found himself returning her affections as he hadn't had the chance before. Her legs tangled with his as they went down. She tried to hold him, pin him with one arm, cursed at her lack of balance, and kissed him again. Her tongue tangled with his, scarlet rot leaving a faint tingling tuft on his lips. Kurama's chakra burned the feeling away, even as she dove on him anew. Her fingers tore at his tunic, leaving tingling numbness in their wake. His hand found her jacket. Yanked. In their fumbling, she looped an arm around his neck. In turn, he got a hold of the leather cord holding her hair back. He tugged it free. Scarlet tresses tumbled loose, flowing down Millicent's back and shoulders in a crimson tide. Naruto found himself momentarily taken aback by the beauty of it. She really had been growing it out all this time. Golden eyes met his, half-lidded, chest heaving, bosom exposed. Motes of moonlight blue light danced across her skin, exposing her wanting body to him, scars and all. A coy, if inebriated smile graced her lips. She leaned back, covering her breasts with a slender arm. Do you approve, my lord? Am I not your blade? Naruto knew what she wanted to hear from him, if not necessarily why. You are. Millicent made a pleased noise that bordered on a possessive growl. Pushed him down, climbed onto him, atop him, now. He gulped. You all right, there? But of course, my lord. Her eyes absolutely flashed, glowing in the low light like twin suns set ablaze. She kissed him again and leaned forward, gazing down at him, grinning with half-crazed lust. Why wouldn't I be? A second kiss stilled his protests. I'm here, with you. There is nowhere else I'd rather be. In that instant, Naruto could have sworn he saw something over her shoulder, as though an afterimage of someone else briefly overlapped her very being. Someone tall, a woman with red hair and one arm, so like her, yet someone he'd never once laid eye upon. He blinked and the eerie afterimage vanished, leaving him to wonder if he'd merely imagined it in the first place. A muted voice sprang to his mind, stemming from his runering. She is becoming her. You will have to slay her before the end. He shoved it away, appalled. No, no, no. Millicent was Millicent. No one else. Wait, why was she looking at him like that? Oh dear. Millicent pounced again. This time there was no escape. The night descended into a carnal haze. Scene. Drunk Millicent is certainly amusing to write, and that ominous bit at the end there had a purpose. Confused, I'll clarify it here and now. In first build of the game, Millicent was originally intended to be Melina. Even in the current build, she carries her will inside her. Her thoughts, her purpose, the one she cast aside when she fought Radon, one she wanted to return to her. We all know how that ended. Hopefully she'll have a kinder fate this time. Well, did you like this story? Yes, no, maybe? Speak up, make yourselves heard. Your voice matters. Silence hurts worse than any flame. Once more, we're sticking with the Embers rule for this story. If folks don't like this, it won't be continued. Meaning that if the story itself ain't popular, poof, gone. Completely. I'm working 2 jobs during the holidays, so I barely have time to write. As such, I cannot afford to write something folks don't enjoy. So by all means, speak up. Your voice matters. Make yourself heard. As ever, reviews are the fuel that sustain me. Without them I cannot write a single word. Simple as that. So in the immortal words of Atlas, review, wouldst thou kindly, and have some previews. Some are quite off, but still. Fee about her head. It is good to see you again. How fares your health? She didn't miss the new great runes. Oh, that very nice indeed. Hey, there's a grace here, too. I wonder if... He touched it, and unbidden the image of a golden plane sprung to his mind. The warm runering on his finger sang, striking a low harmony with the great runes embedded in his body. Without warning, the world lurched around him, shifting in whirls of myriad gold on black. A faint sense of nausea shot up his throat. He choked it down. Please, a voice begged. Help me. Everything went dark. What have you done now? It was to that so familiar, exasperated cry that he returned to the round table. Boy, I wasn't gone that long. Rennala tapped her foot. Would seem you have been most busy since I saw thee last. Yup, pretty much. So blunt. She hadn't expected Rennala. Naruto took a tiny bit of pleasure in that, the way her eyes grew wide for a moment, her mouth agape. Rennala hummed, thumbing her chin. How strange it is to find someone taller than me. I feel almost petite without using my power. Right. He'd seen her grow against Radon, hadn't he? Wait, why isn't she getting angry? Dragons truly were impossible to understand sometimes. Still, she'd integrated into their party relatively quickly. She slotted quite nicely back into their little group. Glintstone Dragon Smaragd was not happy to see them. Rennala thumbed her chin. I do not understand. This one has ever been a good child. He's got crystals growing out his skull if you think for 1 second she's sane after that. Actually. Hey, I thought that thing was a boy. So do most. Latenna hid a laugh behind her hand. No, you look wonderful. You're mocking me, aren't you? Patches raised both hands to ward him off. Nice fox, good fox, please don't eat me. Morgoth creaked an eye open. Was he being ignored? Nay, surely not. The Tarnished had to come this way sooner or later. Didn't he? Somewhere in her tomb, Selen sneezed. Boy, got you something. Millicent turned to face him. Paused. Is it an arm? Naruto hefted the prosthetic limb like some bloody trophy. You have no idea what Patches and I went through to get this so much poison. We'll rest here. A faint shimmer behind him told a different story. Finally done hiding, are you? Melina was silent for a long moment. This is not the place of my death. And didn't that just sting? Well, screw that, he wasn't going to let her die, even if it killed him. Then she sat beside him. Her head came to rest against his bloody shoulder. As he looked on, her good eye closed. The enemy you face is no base foe. You will need all the strength you can muster. She offered her hand once more. Shall I turn your runes to strength? He blew out a small, irritated sigh. Do it. His world burst into light, and through it, he heard her voice. I wish to tell you a story.